people are. But again, it does remain relatively peaceful as opposed to some of those other cities we are seeing across the country, guys.
Nate, if you can still hear us, we were wondering what things might be going on down at Van Andel Arena. If you can just see that looking down the street, if there's a crowd gathered in front of Van Andel right now.
Okay, great. Yeah, Nick, thanks for that. We will, we're over just kind of a block away from there on the other side of the police station. But that's definitely, we can head that way, and we'll take a look at that, get that for you here on 13 on your side.
All right, yeah, and we've got crews all over the place. Nate, thank you very much. And we're going to be hearing in just a couple of minutes. We heard from Chief Payne. Nate, thank you very much. We heard from Chief Payne a little while ago. Sergeant Adams is going to be joining us on the phone just a couple of minutes, so we're going to be able to ask him a little bit more possibly about those officers that were in the car. We're going to be asking him about the graffiti. We're going to be asking him, particularly, I'm going to want to know, where are their officers stationed right now? What is their attitude? What are they thinking about the protests that they're seeing so far? Because we're more than 3 hours into this. We're 3.5+ hours into this now, and it does not seem like we have had a major incident.
No, it does not seem like we've had a major incident, which is very good news. I'm happy to see that it didn't escalate into anything that we would consider to be violent. But this has been a lot. It's been a long night. It's 6 o'clock. It was a lot going on in that short amount of time, and people really turned out today. I honestly was a little bit surprised that there was such a big turnout.
Yeah, and you were here at 6 o'clock. I wasn't. About how long did it take for those groups to make their way down towards police headquarters?
It was very quickly. I would say before 6:45, people had made their way. We started to get the live picture in front of GRPD headquarters. It seemed sort of like they gathered quickly in Rosa Parks Circle, from what it seemed, and they just started to march, and that was where the march was headed. So it happened very quickly after 6 o'clock's gather time.
Okay, and there were images coming out of Kalamazoo. We can see Nate on the move right there, actually. I think he's making, I saw some yellow partitions on the left-hand side. I think he's on his way right now, possibly to Van Andel Arena to check out the scene there. But I know that there were scenes going on, there were protests going on down in Kalamazoo as well. And if we get any information on those, we'll of course bring those to you. But we're looking on the street right now from GRPD headquarters on towards Van Andel. I'm assuming that's where Nate's going. And you can see a large sign in the distance there. But again, I'm not going near downtown. I actually avoided that route on my way to work coming up from the southern part of the county. Simply because I also didn't know what streets may or not be shut down. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of calm individuals so far. And reassessing a little bit of what we have seen, there was the graffiti on the side of GRPD that folks saw a little while ago. There were SWAT teams out, police in riot gear, I suppose we're talking about SWAT. And we did have some form of gas that was deployed. I think we're seeing a barrier area right there potentially. It looks pretty clear at that point. I think those might be officers in the distance. But again, some form, one of our reporters on scene, Emma Nicholas, says there was some form of gas deployed at some point. We can't say for a fact that that was tear gas, but some disbursement measure was used by police. See a sign on the ground now, and Nate is coming up on what may be a bigger crowd. We just had another scene here pop up on the left. I'm going to ask my producer what shot that is. Not hearing anything from our producers just yet. We'll let you know what that is on the left hand when we get a chance.
Now, Nick, I know our crews, when they were downtown earlier this evening, they had a very hard time getting to the location of where everybody was. So as you said, you kind of stayed away from the downtown area because you weren't sure what roads were going to be closed. It was a very tight scene in terms of getting anywhere downtown to meet. They were having trouble meeting up with each other. It was just a very busy scene. Now, this seems like a much bigger crowd than we saw in that earlier picture. This is a little bit similar to what we saw early hours, a few hours ago, in front of police headquarters, Nick.
Yeah, and people there's putting their hands up. We've seen this in protests before. Going back to the Black Lives Matters movement in the last couple of years, the hands up, don't shoot image. Everyone's looking very calm, and I think that's 13 on your side's Jamal Spencer, who's probably getting set up to go live for us here in just a few moments. Yeah, you can see right there in your screen there's a line of police officers with their backs to us, and a lot of protesters opposite them, face to face with placards up. And I'm pretty sure this is the intersection right in front of Van Andel. I may get corrected on that. No, I'm being told that is exactly what we're seeing now. This is right in front of Van Andel. And asking my producer, do we know if Jamal is set up and ready to go yet? Not yet? Okay, a couple of moments now and we'll hear from him. And we're also going to be hearing from Sergeant Adams with Grand Rapids Police over the phone as soon as he is set up. But still, calm as it has been for the most part since 6 o'clock, Sarah.
Definitely. This is, despite saying that, Nick, though, this is a pretty interesting scene. There's a lot of people out there. I think people are very passionate about this. What's going on around us, and they've really turned out. They have voices. Again, Chief Payne, who we spoke to earlier, he says, I hear you. He wants the protesters to know that they are being heard. He is happy that it hasn't escalated to anything violent, but it was intended to be peaceful since the beginning.
And it has, They've pulled that off by and large, graffiti notwithstanding. And Jamal looks as though he's set up. Jamal Spencer is now live for us in front of Van Andel Arena. Jamal, what can you tell us? I think Jamal is actually calling in right now to our IFB so he can hear us. Jamal, do you have us?
Yeah, I can talk. Yeah, I got you, Nick. I'm sorry. The second we arrived, bottled water started flying. There are people in the face of cops challenging them directly. Chants of no justice, no peace. Obviously a very emotional scene, but literally the second we arrived, people started throwing water bottles. As of right now, the police officers are maintaining a position of poise. They are not, challenging anyone. They are not being aggressive. They are allowing people to voice their anger and frustrations. Other than the occasional water bottles being thrown, there isn't a lot of hostility other than just people yelling and screaming.
Every action has a
All right.
Agreed.
All right, Jamal, stand by. We have Sergeant Dan Adams with the Grand Rapids Police Department who's joined us now on the phone. Sergeant Adams, we appreciate you joining us. First question, Sergeant, what is your impression of the conduct, I suppose, for lack of a better word, of the protesters, hundreds of them that we have in downtown Grand Rapids right now?
Well, Nick, as far as the conduct goes, we knew that this was going to start off as a peaceful protest, as a silent march, and you know what? From Chief Payne on down to everyone here at the department, we are completely supportive of everyone's right to free speech, to free expression, and I'm not going to insult the community by saying that I understand everything that everybody's going through, but I could recognize that there was some need to vent, to get together, to come together, to pray, to march, whatever it was. But we've moved from a protest to a rally to basically civil unrest at this point. And here in our community, this just isn't okay. This isn't going to accomplish anything. This isn't going to get people to the table to talk. This isn't going to institute change. It's not good for conversation. So really at this point, our message is, and Chief Payne went out in front of the building earlier and said, I hear you. I've heard you my whole career. And, he's always been willing since day one to have these conversations, and he's willing to now. But this, right now what's going on, that's not going to accomplish this. Our message is we hear you, but it's time to call it a night, to head on home, hug your family, pray, whatever it is. And let's be all ready to come to work, tomorrow and sit down and have good conversations about what we can do going forward.
Sergeant, thank you very much. We had, looking at the video from our vantage point, and I totally understand how you're calling it civil unrest. I think that is apt. We have seen, by and large, with the exception of some graffiti on the side of the building, which is not good, a couple of water bottles our reporter on scene was talking about. We have not seen any violence, however. Have you seen anything that you can describe as violent so far?
Well, I guess that's a good question. I guess it depends on your definition of violence. There's obviously a lot of pushing and jostling and things of that nature. We've got considerable damage to a number of buildings, around the Division Fulton area. But as with the goal of police work, whether there's violence or not now is we're always trying to prevent things from happening as best as possible. And so let's not get to that point. Even if there isn't a lot of violence right now, then good. But let's make sure that we don't get to the point where there is. We're not going to stand back and watch this and wait until it gets to the point where people are seriously getting hurt. And that's from everybody. That's bystanders, that's residents in the area, and that's the protesters themselves. We are dedicated to everyone in this community, to their safety and security, and we're not going to stand by and let it get to that violent of a point before we have to step in.
And as we're talking to you, I think we're seeing tear gas canisters being dispersed in the area in front of Van Andel Arena. These are the first ones that I've seen personally with my eyes, and I'm seeing protesters starting to throw things as well. So unfortunately, Sergeant, it does look as though potentially things may be escalating while we are talking to you. We're obviously hoping things calm down as well. Have there been any arrests thus far?
Last I knew, not to my knowledge, no. At this point, we are preparing to keep the security, obviously, of everything downtown. Everyone at this point has been advised through multiple Bullhorn announcements and directions that this has now been declared an unlawful assembly and it's time to disperse.
Okay.
Arrest was not our first tool in the tool bag that we wanted to move to. We wanted to give opportunity to everyone to share their feelings, to vent some frustration in a productive way, and to feel like that their voice was heard. But like I said, that appears to have been moved past, and we can't let that go any further.
Calling this an unlawful assembly, does that mean theoretically anyone who is still out there can be arrested?
Essentially, yeah, we're at that point. That's why our message right now to the community, to downtown, is this is the time to go. This is the time to go home, spend time with your family, and talk about your experiences and your feelings, and let's come to the table and get ready to get down and do the real work. But right now, what's happening? This isn't helping, and we as you can see, we've moved to the point where. Mobile field force has been deployed. The authorization to use chemical munitions has been deployed, and let's stop this before it does get any worse.
Sergeant, this is Sarah. Thank you so much again for joining us. I'm wondering, what is the step forward as we get into the overnights? I had said to Nick earlier, I said, I wonder as we get later in the evening, I didn't get a chance to ask this question to Chief Payne, what is the plan as we head into the late night hours?
Well, the plan is as it now is just to protect and to secure, the community. Obviously, we're not going to get into specifics, but anyone who's looking around in the area can see the number of personnel that we have, and we're not the only agency involved, and we're working closely with our partners, but we're well trained, we're well equipped, but the biggest thing is that we have going for us is our professionalism and our sense of service, and we're going to carry that out into whatever street that we walk down and out into the community. That's the plan, is to protect and to serve, which is what we're called to do.
All right, Sergeant Dan Adams with the Grand Rapids Police Department. We appreciate very much your time. We hope both the public and your officers stay safe tonight. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and let's shift gears now. 13 on your sides. Nate Belt is in downtown. Nate, where are you and what are you seeing right now? And he's coughing. I think, Nate, you may have been one of the people that got hit with
Nick,
some of the tear gas.
I'm having a hard time even keeping my eyes open right now. A gas canister literally just went off about 2 feet away from Dan and I down here. I'm going to step off to the camera because I can't even keep my eyes open, but you can see right down here in front of Van Andel, a gas canister, multiple just went off not too long ago, and I am feeling it, man. It is burning my eyes, burning my throat. Dan is feeling the same thing, and people have dispersed out of the area. There's still a few folks down there, but man, it is strong, and we are that was the first one that we have experienced down here. I can tell you, I was just listening to your phone call with Sergeant Adams, and I heard him say that chemical munitions have been deployed, and I can confirm that for you. We were right in the middle of it. I am teary right now. So
yeah, okay, Nate, you take a moment.
We're going to try and get to a place
Yeah,
We
Nate.
can get out of that right now.
Nate,
but,
go get someplace right now where you can clear your head and your eyes for just a minute, and let's go ahead, Sarah. We'll recap a little bit of what Sergeant Dan Adams told us. Said it for the first time that we've heard tonight that this was officially now an unlawful assembly, which means it is time for people to go home. You can be arrested if you are still out now at this point. He also enlightened us to a few things that we, to be perfectly blunt, while we were talking about and complimenting the people and protesters of Grand Rapids about how well behaved they'd been, there have actually been some damage to buildings. 13 on your side, Jamal Spencer, also downtown, and he is joining us now. Jamal, you were right where some of those chemical munitions were going off. Tell us a little bit about the scene and what you saw and heard down there.
More officers arrived, Nick. There were a series of officers already standing there. 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 more officers arrived and immediately started to ask the crowd just to back up, give them some space. That conversation didn't last very long. After asking a few times, officers began to lob canisters toward the crowd, aiming at the ground. Smoke came out. I heard you call them tear gas canisters, Nick. I was unsure whether it was just smoke canisters or tear gas canisters, but something came out of them. There were a few that were sparks. The crowd immediately began to disperse, and now there is almost no one here. I mean, there's a police presence, but the crowd that had gathered at this intersection is now gone.
Okay, and Jamal, when we first talked with you a little bit earlier, you had mentioned people were throwing water bottles. Was that directed at you? Was that directed at police? Or were they just being thrown in general, do you know?
Nick, they were just being thrown in general. I don't think the people who were throwing them had any care who they landed on. Some hit the officers, and to the officers' credit, they did not respond to that at all. Some hit the crowd. Some landed at the feet of me and our photographer, Mike Powers. But overall, I think the people who were throwing the water bottles didn't really have a target. They were just throwing them out of frustration.
Okay, and Jamal, I see some barricades going up in the back of our camera shot there. Are those police setting those barricades up, or are those actually protesters moving those around?
It's actually protesters moving them around, but the police are standing directly on the other side of them.
Okay.
Again, the police are not engaging the protesters, so people who are moving the divides aren't being met with much resistance.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're going to count our blessings on that one, and that things have maybe diffused a little bit in this moment. Jamal, thank you very much. We're going to let you catch your breath now, and we'll get back to you when we can. Nate Belt was out, and he mentioned that he had just gotten some sort of disbursement in his face as well.
Yes. It's got to be a very scary feeling. I'm very saddened to hear that one of our people have experienced that tonight. Something you were speaking before about speaking to Sergeant Adams, and he said the unlawful assembly. All of these people who are out there have not left yet. They could be arrested at this point. Is what that means exactly. I found that to be interesting. But it does seem that there is movement. People are hopefully trying to go home and call it a night, and it hasn't escalated. No arrests, he said, have been made at this point, to his knowledge, is what he said.
Yeah, to his exactly, right. And we may find that to be different as the night wears on. But you can see that street right there. A lot less people there than we saw just a few moments ago. 13 on your sides, Emma Nicholas is joining us now. First time we've talked to Emma in a little while. Emma, remind us of where you are at right now and what you've seen here these last few minutes. All right, we're having problems with Emma's microphone. We're gonna get that microphone fixed and go back to you. It looks like the barrier that Jamal was talking about, where the protesters were moving it around and police just on the other side, that looked to be exactly where Emma was, just off to the side of the street. We're gonna let that microphone issue get addressed here, and then we're gonna go right back to her. But again, Sergeant Dan Adams, if you know someone who is in downtown Grand Rapids right now at these protests, this is now considered an unlawful assembly. He said that there have been damage to buildings, which we were hearing about here just a little while ago for the first time, and it is time to go home. You can be arrested. Emma Nicholas now has, we've addressed those microphone issues. Emma, it looks like you were up right near that barricade with police on one side and protesters on the other.
ago, where Fulton was packed with people, largely peaceful. It was at the barricade where it divided people and MSP. And then at some point there were water bottles thrown, and things kind of got chaotic rather quickly when there was tear gas dispersed. And now, I'll kind of show you over here where there's no longer people, really as many people. This Fulton was packed minutes ago and it has largely dispersed. Many people saying they were heading back towards the police department. At this point, we haven't seen tear gas dispersed in a little bit. It's not really clear what's happening here. This barricade of officers has been standing by like this. The tear gas was thrown kind of further back here on the roadway onto the ground, and people largely dispersed, and there's just people kind of lingering around. But as you can see, like I said, we're on Fulton and Ionia, and Fulton was packed this way, and now largely a lot of people are filling down this way. So it's not really clear though what's going to be used next, what's happening next.
All right, Emma, we're hearing a lot of people. We're hearing a lot of people in the background, and I know there's a bit of a delay with us getting to you, but Jamal was telling us just a moment ago he was seeing bottles being thrown. We're seeing a few of those on the ground. What have you seen in regards to any potential or lack, hopefully, aggression between the protesters and the police?
I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear you, but if you were saying aggression between the two, no.
Okay, I think we're going to have to pull away from Emma. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let our producers know we need to pull away from Emma. We are having a hard time hearing her. We still don't have that microphone issue completely addressed. But Sarah, yeah, she was setting that scene fairly well for us about how that area had not completely, but very much so dispersed.
Definitely, and as Jamal had said before, you asked about the barriers going up. The protesters are moving the barriers around, hopefully to move to get out of the area and to leave for the end of the night. Still looks like a pretty, I don't want to say busy scene, but there's still some activity going on down there. It's been a long night, a lot of hours. People have turned out there really impassioned to come down here and to take part in this protest.
Yeah, hopefully they're going home though, as with the unlawful assembly order that has been given by police. And you can see, as Jamal mentioned earlier, police have been letting people have their say. They are not being aggressive with the public. And we haven't seen any, at least to our eyes, and according to Sergeant Dan Adams, we haven't seen any major confrontations thus far, which, we're going to put that in the win column so far tonight, folks. No arrests that he has thus heard about. While we are waiting for some of our other reporters on scene, we want to reset now that we are at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock here, Eastern Time in Grand Rapids, Michigan, on a night of protest, a fourth night of protest all across the country after the death of George Floyd, captured on camera in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with an officer who had his knee on Floyd's neck for a period of about 9 minutes, including several minutes after he lost consciousness and later died. And this is the first major night of protests here in Grand Rapids. 13 on your sides, Nate Belt rejoins us, who got a full helping of some disbursement gas, possibly some tear gas a little bit earlier. Nate, hope you're feeling a little bit better now, my friend. I see you're right in front of police headquarters. What's it seem like there right now?
Yeah, Nick, as you mentioned, got a whole face full of that tear gas not too long ago, but starting to feel a little bit better. We actually had a kind woman come by and pour some water right in my eyes. That took care of it. Now, I'll take a look behind me here, behind the scene. We've got kind of a barrier of police around. Maybe, Dan, if we could try and lift that camera up just so they can see a little bit of the scene here. But we've actually got like a circle of police keeping folks out of the intersection here. We're at Fulton and Commerce. And that is it seems like a lot of people have moved up from Van Andel where we were. That's where the gas was dispersed. A lot of people have moved back up the road and back here towards the police station. It definitely has kind of dispersed a little bit since when we first got here. If we take a look around, let's take a look behind us here at the police station. There's not as many people in front, but there are some people still directly at the glass doors as well. Dan, if we want to get a shot there, yeah, where the graffiti is, and we are just keeping an eye on the situation as folks continue to stay out here.
All right, Nate, we're going to have him get the camera off the graffiti there. And folks at home, we apologize about the graphic language. Nate, you'd mentioned, if you can still hear me, Nate. Yeah, I think he can still hear me. As far as the disbursement goes, and all right, we've moved scenes here now. We've moved to a different camera. Don't know if we have a different reporter ready to go. And again, we apologize about the graffiti, folks. You're going to see that on a night like tonight, unfortunately. And talking about what our reporters are saying, we had some disbursement gas, possibly tear gas. Nate got some of it, and it seems to be doing its job. The police seem to be getting people to move away from where they want to, where they don't want to be them. I don't know strategy, if they just don't want the big crowds or if there's something about that particular area,
Right.
but it has seemed effective in moving people.
Now, I can tell you, Nick, we looked at this scene for many hours tonight, and this is an incredibly different scene. We saw this stretch, this shot here right now was packed with people just a few hours ago. So agree with what you said. Whatever they're doing to get people moving, it seems to be working. I'm not sure what we're looking
Yeah, and
at
Sarah,
right there.
sorry to interrupt. That looks to be a SWAT van, a special units van potentially, where it appears as though police are suiting up. Helmets going on, I think. If we can get a quick zoom in, and that looks to be what it is. It's a special operations unit vehicle. So they may be increasing their presence. 13 on your sides, Jamal Spencer rejoins us now. Jamal, where are you right now, sir?
Kind of in the same vicinity as Nate, near Fulton and Commerce, directly across the street from the Grand Rapids Police Department, where it was graffitied earlier. Tensions are building back up here. More water bottles being thrown at the police, more projectiles being launched in their direction. Again, to the police's credit, they're at least stationed right behind me. They are not responding to things being thrown at them, but people are still being in their face, still being aggressive, still voicing their displeasure. As we reported, after the tear gas was dispersed, people moved away from the Van Andel Arena location, but it doesn't look like people went home. Instead, they just kind of moved down the street, and now they're here in front of the Grand Rapids Police Department.
Jamal, they have given that unlawful order, an unlawful assembly order. They want people to go home. Does it appear to you at all as though people are, or does it seem as though the crowd is growing?
It doesn't appear that the crowd is growing, but it's definitely not getting smaller, Nick. We can hear the police officers saying something on the Bullhorn. I assume it's what you just said, which is saying that this is now an unlawful assembly. But I'm going to be honest, the people here cannot hear that. With the yelling that's going on and the anger that's going on, they cannot hear this order. But now things are quieting down as they are getting on the PA system. The police are getting on the PA system, once again asking people to disperse, once again saying it is an unlawful assembly. So now we have to wait and see how long it takes for these people to leave, if they do choose to leave.
Okay, Jamal, thank you. We're going to check in with 13 on your side reporter Emma Nicholas. Emma, tell us where you are and what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, we are at Fulton and Ionia. It appears that additional gear is being put on by law enforcement right here. Not exactly clear what's going to come here. Earlier, we had tear gas that was deployed. As everyone has been talking about this, it has been deemed unlawful at this point, an unlawful protest at this point, and people are being asked to leave. It's not clear what this additional gear is meaning, but we can also see that further up the road, more people are starting to congregate. Something was set on fire further up the road. So we will try to get an idea of what's going on. Oh my gosh, something's on fire here. We're gonna take you to go look at what that is.
Okay, Emma.
Yeah, Emma, you be careful.
Please be careful. Yes, what we've been talking about it. It seems that the scene was getting smaller. It seemed like people are leaving, but now we are hearing reports from our crew
Yeah, that
on the ground.
and Sarah, I'm going to interrupt you right now. That appears to be a building that is on fire now.
Wow.
Emma, can you tell us what is that? The Buffalo Wild Wings? Okay, yeah, we're getting confirmation in here. That is the Buffalo Wild Wings just up on Ionia from Van Andel Arena. So we now have a major structure, major business in downtown Grand Rapids that is now on fire. Emma, can you hear us?
We can hear you, yes. Sorry, trying to get over closer to see what's going on. Just stay with us.
Yeah, we're waiting.
Not clear exactly yet. We're trying to get closer. Just for context on where we are, we're at Ionia and Fulton. Still, just by Back 40 Saloon is where the fire is behind that area. Not clear yet what it is.
Okay.
Trying to walk over closer. You can see the smoke. Sorry, we're getting closer now.
All right, if we can tell people it's not the Buffalo Wild Wings, as the video, it looked like it for a brief moment there. So let's scratch that, but something is definitely on fire, Emma. Okay, it's an alley fire.
There is a fire on a balcony.
Holy fucking shit.
I'm not sure if you guys still have me or not.
We have you, Emma.
Okay. And someone has just cracked a window.
Back 40 Saloon.
Like I said, we're right by Back 40 Saloon.
Down there, shit's going down.
Oh my god.
Okay. We're
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. Whole lot of gay shit going on. Nigga, fuck Donald Trump.
okay.
All right, and as Emma is trying to get a better look at that, we just want to reiterate what very much looked like a structure fire of a business downtown. Not the case, but we do have, this is in an alley right near the Buffalo Wild Wings, right behind it, where something is on fire back there. We can't tell if it's a dumpster, we can't tell if it's some sort of a patio or deck, but obviously something ablaze. Emma, do you have a better angle on what that is? Somebody out there with a fire extinguisher now trying to put it out. Do you have any better idea of what this is, Emma? All right, while we wait on confirmation, thankfully, whatever it was, it looks like somebody's putting it out. It looks like a private citizen, not Grand Rapids Fire, though they may be down there as well. We don't know. Looks like there's a vehicle coming into our shot right now, and we'll wait to get Emma Nicholas back when we can. So at first we thought we had a structure fire, and just from the angle that we had on the camera, the smoke was coming up from behind the Buffalo Wild Wings, which is exactly where that fire is. Thankfully, this is not a major structure fire, because we were scared there for a brief moment as to what we might be looking at. Thankfully, that is not the case, but Sarah, things are escalating right now in downtown Grand Rapids.
Definitely. We had just talked about, we thought it was starting to slow down, and this is the first time we've seen something like that, the image coming up. It's turning into somewhat of a scary scene right now.
13 on your side, Jamal Spencer joined just now. Jamal, I don't know what sort of vantage point you had from that fire, what it may have been. Did you see it, and where are you at right now? Move if you need to.
Yeah, we saw the fire. More tear gas canisters are being launched into the crowd. One just hit us.
Jamal, move.
Okay.
Yep.
Being asked to move.
Okay, Jamal is being asked to move, and he is getting out of there.
More water bottles are being thrown.
Wow, it's definitely an escalating scene.
Yep, okay. We're going to bring it back up on the desk to let our crews get to safety and where police want them to be. We don't want our crews anywhere where they shouldn't be. So in the last, let's reset here a little bit. In the last 20 minutes or so, we've seen in downtown Grand Rapids, we've seen multiple deployments of disbursement material, tear gas. And we can say that for a fact because we just saw our second reporter who was right in the middle of it. Something was on fire behind the Buffalo Wild Wings. We don't know what it was. Apparently it was put out already. Sergeant Dan Adams with the Grand Rapids Police Department says this is now an unlawful assembly. You can be arrested if that happens. We've seen what appear to be more SWAT officers getting suited up in their vehicle. As far as Sergeant Adams knows, there have been no arrests as of yet, however. We're seeing a lot of more people throwing water bottles. We saw that fire. and people seem to be moving around. According to one of our reporters on scene, it doesn't seem as though the crowd is getting any bigger, but it certainly is not getting any smaller at this point in time.
No, certainly not. And as I keep talking about earlier today, this is a bit of a different scene than we saw earlier. It seemed much more peaceful earlier today, and now it seems a little bit more wild. We're going to send it to 1390 reporter Nate Belt. Nate, tell us where you are and what you're seeing.
Well, guys, from where Jamal was, from what I was listening over on the other side of this alley, we're kind of came over to the other side. That fire is out now. You can see down the alley just a ton of smoke coming up, but that fire is put out. It looked like there's like a little porch, a little balcony coming off the side of this building here. Looks like that was what was on fire, but again, it is completely out right now. There are only a few people left inside of the alley here, but a ton of smoke in the air. So we're going to keep moving around and keep trying to get you. There's still some embers. You can see them down there still coming out, and someone with a fire extinguisher spraying it. You can probably see it in the shot there. So we're going to keep moving around and keep trying to get you a shot, but we just want to let you know that fire is entirely out, at least as what it looks like from where we're standing.
Good to know. And this is the shot again, right in front of the Grand Rapids Police Department. A lot of people. We can't see exactly what's going on right at the front door, but there are certainly a lot of people there right now. And again, finishing what we're talking about, that fire is out, but there's definitely a stronger police presence. We saw in the area of Ionia where they were suiting up. They want people to go home. People out in the protest aren't listening to us, unfortunately, right now, unless they happen to be streaming us, which I would doubt. I think that's Kylie Ambu. No, it's not. But it remains to be seen whether or not people are going to be going home. We hope they will. We don't know about any arrests just yet, but there are measures being taken by Grand Rapids Police Department to try and disperse these crowds. We've seen several disbursements of tear gas now at this point, and we're also seeing, again, it appears to be more police officers suiting up in tactical gear.
Definitely, and we're seeing some movement. People still seem to be marching back and forth. A different scene than we've seen earlier, of course. It's not as crowded, but still an active scene out there. Our reporters, I admire them for being on the ground. This is definitely a tall order tonight, a very different scene than we're used to on a Saturday night in downtown Grand Rapids, for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm just trying to find out a little bit more about what's going on in some other cities as well. Had several car fires out in Seattle, once again, just trying to give you an idea of what's happening in other parts of the country right now. So we're looking at a team of tactical officers right now, with tactical gear, in downtown Grand Rapids, face to face with a lot of protesters. We don't know what is being said, but fortunately it does not look like there's any aggression being thrown at one another right now, which this is not an ideal situation by any stretch. We've seen damage, we've seen tear gas, we've seen graffiti. We want people to go home, but we don't want any confrontations either. And thus far, hopefully, just based on what we've seen, we haven't seen any physical, I haven't seen any pushing and shoving, anything of that nature. And let's just keep hoping that continues to be the case. And waiting to hear from our producer whether or not we're going to get any of our reporters down on scene back here anytime soon. But again, Sarah, I'll let you reset. This all started again at 6 o'clock with a Black Lives Matter protest, as we're seeing around much of the country in response to George Floyd's death in police custody in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yeah,
so beginning this evening at 6 p.m., it started at Rosa Parks Circle. It was called the Silent March Protesting Police Brutality, and it was peaceful. It started out very peaceful, and the march headed toward the GRPD headquarters in downtown Grand Rapids. Again, these protests have erupted in cities across the country, and it is in response to the death of George Floyd, the 46-year-old unarmed black man that died in police custody in Minneapolis. Now, we've seen violent protests in New York. We've seen them in Chicago. We've seen them in Detroit. We've seen them in Atlanta for the past 3 nights. I believe this is the 4th straight night in a row for protests, and here it is in Grand Rapids. We also heard reports there's some protesting going on in Kalamazoo as well, but you're seeing live picture right now of what this scene in downtown GR looks like. This is the very different scene that I'm used to seeing in downtown. It's a very active, very busy scene tonight.
And if you are watching this right now and you are even thinking about going downtown, don't. If you go downtown right now, you're going to make a tense, bad situation worse, and we don't want to see that. If you know someone down there, give them a call. Ask them, to go home if they can. It seems, by and large, again, we haven't seen any physical violence, but we have seen damage. We had that fire in the alley behind Buffalo Wild Wings. Hundreds of people are still there. Tear gas isn't fun either, as at least one of our reporters can tell you, and I can tell you personally, having dealt with that in East Lansing, my time in East Lansing a time or two, it is not fun. You don't want to get hit with it. And I'm waiting for my producer. Do we have anybody who's available to speak yet?
I believe, Nick, we're actually going to send it to a special report from ABC, if I'm not mistaken. Our producer mentioned in my ear, we're going to take a special report to see what's going on in other cities across America.
What we should be doing is to be trying to talk to people much more about how we need to see justice done here, and that justice will be done, and insisting that justice be done, and to counsel and plead, quite frankly, for the country to show patience. And I understand that for some who feel like this is long overdue, the patience will be tough to get. But I do think that as leaders now, what we need to be doing is saying two things. The first is that our justice system cannot let us down in this circumstance, and the Attorney General of the United States, I'm confident he will, needs to make sure that our system of justice is seen not only as fair but swift. Because justice delayed here will be justice denied in many people's minds. The second thing we need to be saying to those who are taking advantage of this situation, to loot and to destroy property, is that won't be tolerated under any circumstances. So you need to be able to say both things, because there are a lot of people in this country right now who are looking for order to be restored. And again, Terry, I go back to where this started in Minnesota. The governor of Minnesota, I think, failed here in such a fundamentally miserable way that it ignited, an additional fire here. The fire was initially started, no doubt, by the conduct of those police officers and the murder of George Floyd, and that's what I believe it was. From watching the videotape, it was a murder. But a second fire was set when the governor of Minnesota did not make clear that he was going to use all the resources at a governor's disposal, pre-position National Guard. And let me tell you, I commanded National Guard for 8 years in New Jersey, Terry, and these men and women in the National Guard are everyday citizens who serve part-time in the National Guard and the military, who are the people who work all around your town and around your state. And they're in a very difficult position right now, along with law enforcement, to try to control what's going on here. And the more time you can give them to do that, the more time you can give them to prepare, the better off they would be. And that's where the governor of Minnesota failed so miserably and set a second fire in this country after the first fire was set by those police officers in Minnesota who committed the awful acts they committed on Mr. Floyd.
All right. Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey, our colleague here at ABC News, thank you very much for that. There is an open question as to whether or not this fire could have been stanched in Minneapolis, given the history of violence against black men, black people, and it reaching a boiling point in this country, as it seems. As far as the National Guard is concerned, 14 states in this country have now activated or plan to activate the National Guard. This is a country coming apart right now tonight, and I want to go to New York City and our colleague Trevor Alt. Trevor, on the streets there. Take it away. What are you seeing? What's happening?
Yeah, Terry, it is hard to overstate the chaos that we're in right now. Behind me is one NYPD vehicle that is on fire. We're surrounded by people who are demonstrating right now. We have seen a few people. Obviously, tensions are rising very high right now, and there are fires in a few different directions in this intersection here. Now, we're about a block south of Union Square. Obviously, we're getting a little bit.
Time to sign off. It's probably time to sign off there. You can see the risks our reporters are running on the street to bring you the story of a remarkable and painful night in the history of this country. In city after city, that scene is being played out, and there is rage, there is anger, there is righteous indignation, there is sorrow, and there is violence on the streets of city after city in this country. I want to go to my colleague.
All right, bringing it in now from what ABC National News was talking about. There is still violence as well in Grand Rapids, no different than any other city in the nation. Fortunately, not as bad. We haven't seen any physical violence. We've seen some graffiti. We've seen some tear gas, but we've seen some damage. Trying to get an idea of what we're looking at right there, actually. 1300 side's Jamal Spencer. What are we looking at, Jamal? Are you right on the scene where it seems so someone is down?
Yep. EMT emergency rushers rushed up the sidewalk trying to get to the scene. Someone is down. They are administering aid, trying to get this person onto a gurney, onto a stretcher. I don't see an ambulance, so I'm assuming they will have to push the person back down towards where they left their ambulance because, of course, they couldn't drive through to this area. We're at the corner of Division and Fulton right now, where it seems like a lot of the protesters who were gathered down at the area we were earlier, where the fire was outside of the Buffalo Wild Wings, have moved down to this section at, again, Division and Fulton. But yes, Nick, this woman has been administered. She's been helped up onto a gurney. It doesn't look like anything serious, but people are still gathered here. As we mentioned earlier, people didn't go home. They just moved to a different part of downtown Grand Rapids. Things are getting pretty tense outside of the police station, or excuse me, again, here at the intersection of Fulton and Division.
Hey, Jamal,
more and more people are descending upon this area, more and more people jumping up and down.
Jamal,
So,
behind
again,
you, we
I'm
saw
hearing glass breaking. I can't see where it's coming from, but I can hear broken glass, which elicits more yells and cheers from the crowd. Things do not seem to be calming down. They are now throwing rocks or projectiles into the building here on the corner. That's the broken glass that I was hearing. But yes, things definitely not calming down here at all, Nick.
We had gotten reports earlier when Kylie Amber was on the scene that the Villa Join the Movement shoe store, which we just saw behind you at some point, that had been broken into earlier. Is there still any scene around that? I think right now we're looking at across the street from that area, but we did get those reports earlier today.
The the Join the Movement store, there's just a few people standing in front of it, to be completely honest. I'm not sure what had happened earlier, but as of right now, there isn't a lot of attention being paid to this store or to this area. A lot of the attention is kitty corner diagonal across the street, and there are things being thrown into those windows across the street. We're going to try to get a better picture or a better vantage point to show you that. But no, there is nothing wrong right now at the Villa Join the Movement store here on the corner.
Jamal, any idea, that woman that they had to bring out on the gurney, any idea what happened to her? Were you there when she hit the ground?
No, we were not there, Nick, when she hit the ground. We were next to the emergency service workers, the EMTs who rushed up the sidewalk to get to her. We followed them, and she was on the ground when we arrived, but they quickly got her onto the gurney. As you can see, people throwing things into the windows at the Secretary of State. People are going into the Secretary of State's office, breaking the doors, breaking the windows. That's what we see right now. That was the broken glass I heard when I was across the street.
Okay, well, this is stepping up into another level, even from what we were seeing just a half hour ago. Sergeant Dan Abrams, and Jamal, stick with us if you could. Sergeant Dan Abrams had mentioned that there had been damage. We are seeing an escalation of that now. People have actually breached entry by breaking glass into the Secretary of State's office. We saw the fire earlier. We've now seen our first person with some form of an injury. We don't know if it was medically induced or if someone pushed her. We don't know. And actually, I'm going to stop speculating on that because we have someone else who's ready.
We're going to go to Nate Belt, who's been on the street. He's out there now. Nate, where are you and what are you seeing?
Well, guys, we're on Commerce and Fulton, back across from the police department. We actually just saw Jamal talking about someone in the stretcher. We saw that stretcher just rolled down Commerce here. There is an ambulance just down the road behind me, but if you take a look this way, we've got the police in the intersection here at Fulton and Commerce. A lot of folks in front of them kneeling with their hands up. I don't know if we can see them here in the shot, but this
Nate,
seems to be where most people have
back to Jamal Spencer. Jamal, what's happening? We don't need any description from Jamal. We see what's happening. People actually trying to block our camera. That's GRPD, we are being told now. Actually, that says Secretary of State on the wall. My producer is telling me. Okay, same building. It's the Secretary of State's office on the end of the GRPD headquarters.
Yep.
So yeah, it's, once again, people, it's turning into a bit of chaos now down in front of the Grand Rapids.
People are picking up
Here's Jamal.
the concrete slabs that are on the sidewalk. The concrete slabs that sit on the sidewalk that hold flowers that are out on the sidewalk for decoration, people are picking them up and throwing them through windows now. That's the last thing that we just saw. Now they're being dispersed. A large noise here. People are fleeing the scene. Not sure what the loud noise was, but everyone went in the opposite direction. As you can see, things were being thrown into the window of Secretary of State, but now everyone has fled that scene or is at least beginning to flee this scene. And now more tear gas is being launched, or excuse me, these are firecrackers.
Flashbangs.
So that has backed people away from this building for the time being. Again, who knows how long that will last. But as of now, people have at least been moved away from the Secretary of State and are no longer throwing things through the window or trying to breach the building.
Okay. And I'm glad you guys are safe as well. And reiterating, the woman who was carried off on a gurney, earlier Jamal said it did not appear she was serious for her either, so we're glad she is okay. But we are seeing more damage now in downtown Grand Rapids in addition to the fire that was set earlier. And again, that Secretary of State's office is a part of the same building with the Grand Rapids Police Headquarters, and it has been graffitied. The windows have been busted in, and you're seeing more disbursement measures by the GRPD. 1300 Side's Nate Belt is on the opposite side up the street on Ionia from where Jamal was. We're going to get back to him as soon as we can, but yeah, and that's a fire garbage can right in the middle of the street in front of the police. And there's Nate right now. Nate, go ahead and take it away. You're on the opposite side of where Jamal was.
They're going to come to us. Yeah, Nick, we're actually just up the street. We just passed Jamal and Mike where they were. You can see we got a trash can on fire in the middle of the intersection of Fulton and Division right now. It seems like a lot of people have moved up here. We've got people in the park across the street over where the monument is down here at Division and Fulton that are climbing up onto the side areas. Again, this trash can looks like a traffic cone was part of that fire. People throwing cans everywhere. There's cans all over the street. We actually just saw a couple fireworks go off as well down here. It's very smoky. And I mean, everywhere you go, there is just either gas in the air or smoke in the air right now in downtown. And it's definitely getting harder to breathe while we're down here. So we are going to continue to keep an eye on that and keep trying to get you new videos of the scene here.
All right, and while we keep your picture up, Nate, we just brought a picture up on the upper right-hand side of your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Detroit tonight. And it seems to be as bad as things are right now in Grand Rapids. They look to possibly be worse in Michigan's largest city on the east side of the state. You can see a large police presence. You can see smoke in the background billowing. I'm not quite sure where this is in Detroit proper. It's obviously downtown. There's a tactical vehicle there on the right. So what we have seen for the last several nights in America and in Detroit has now obviously spread here to Grand Rapids as well. People upset over the death of George Floyd. And again, on your left, and people making an arrest there on the right in Grand Rapids, in Detroit rather, dragging someone off. And on the left, Grand Rapids, where we have seen an escalation here in the last 60 minutes or so, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this started, again, to recap for people who are just joining us, this began today in Rosa Parks Circle as a silent march protesting police brutality. The scene has changed very much since 6 p.m., and this is what we're seeing now. We're going to head back to 13 on your side's Jamal Spencer, who is in downtown GR. Jamal.
There was a loud explosion just now from inside the Secretary of State building. Now they are trying to set fire to the Secretary of State building. They are putting posters and banners on the window that has been broken out, and they are taking some sort of what looks to be aerosol can and trying to light the banner and throw it into the Secretary of State building. I hope you can see this picture right now. That's what's happening here. We moved down to the corner of Division and Monroe Center, so now we are opposite of where we used to be, but now you can still see this Secretary of State building with this large crowd. After that explosion and people dispersed, people have come right back and are now trying to set, I can't say set the building on fire, but set a banner on fire that is in the window.
And we just heard and saw another explosion in that area, Jamal. I don't know if that was directly from inside the Secretary of State's office or not. But it is clear what people are trying to do down there. This is Grand Rapids on a Saturday night in May in 2020. There's chaos downtown. People are trying to set fire to the Secretary of State's office. Tear gas has been let loose several times. We've had a fire. We will have a larger, more complete picture in the morning of what all has transpired. Nate Belt rejoins us now. Nate.
Yeah, hey, Nick, that trash can we showed you just a second ago that's on fire literally just exploded. I was about maybe 5 feet away from it. The flames went maybe 20 feet up in the air. That thing, it was a loud, loud bang. We had to step away. We've got some very loud cars out here right now, revving up their engines at the intersection. Geez, there goes the firework, too, right there. Over at the Secretary of State building, that's what's right across the way from us. That's where Jamal is. We're hearing lots of loud bangs, some explosions as well. So we are trying to get into an area that's safe. There's fireworks going up in the sky right now. But we're just trying to keep an eye on everything. And we may need to move here to get to a safer vantage point.
Yep, go. Go if you need, Nate. Go if you need. Even if you just think you need to. Get out of there if you do. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Again, people have breached the Secretary of State's office, trying to set fire to it. We've got fireworks going off in the street, which actually look like flashbangs. And
I was going to ask, Nick, do you think those fire that we're seeing, and we don't have any confirmation, those are set up by the police to kind of disperse people? Do we think people are setting them off in the street? We don't know.
Not going to speculate.
Okay.
Not going to speculate. We just know that they are going off. We're going to go back to Detroit now, if we have images there.
But yes, we also are raising our voices and pushing back. But what we are seeing on the ground right now in communities around the country is something that I think people should really recognize. The FBI and other agencies have been warning us for a while about the sort of range of white supremacists and white nationalism that has infiltrated police departments around the country. And what we are seeing is police departments that are not accountable and responsible to the mayors and the governors. We've heard one thing from mayors and governors at press conferences and are seeing a different thing on the streets from police departments that seem to be able to de-escalate when white men with guns show up to capitals demanding that cities reopen. And on the other hand, we are seeing police officers that when they see a black or brown face, not only are unable to de-escalate, but they do the escalation. And so we're seeing these images, and the call for people right now, for everyday people of good faith, regardless of your race, is that now is the time for action. If you are aware, then you need to take action. You need to join campaigns and efforts in your local communities and your organizations. You need to join efforts like ours at Color of Change to raise your voice. We need to get involved in electing new district attorneys. We need to ensure that at the top of the ticket, we have a president that will not incite this type of violence, but will actually work to bring us together and advance new changes.
All right. Rashad Robinson, president of Color of Change, talking about action that each American has to take to stop this cycle. Thank you very much. I want to go back to the streets of New York City, which are troubled like so many cities tonight. You can see there in several spots there have been very significant, not just protests, but clashes between the police and the protesters. And go back to Bob Boyce, former chief of detectives in the New York City Police Department. Bob, earlier we were talking, you said the New York City...
All right, we're going to dump out now again from ABC coverage to take another look at what's going on here in the Grand Rapids area.
And Jamal Spencer standing by in downtown. Jamal, tell us what you're seeing.
Sarah, earlier you asked if the explosions we heard were coming from the police or if they were coming from the protesters. The fireworks that were being set off, that was the protesters. They were setting off fireworks inside the Secretary of State here. They were doing that for a little bit. Then the police started to move up the block, coming from the police station location where we were at earlier, where tear gas canisters were let off. Once the police moved up the block, they let off a couple more rounds of tear gas, and that caused everyone at this intersection to once again disperse and kind of flee in separate directions.
We stand for our amendments.
The crowd now is not as strong as it once was, but there are still things being thrown into the Secretary of State here at this corner of Division and Monroe Center, I believe. But once the police moved up the corner, their presence alone has kind of caused the crowd here to dissipate a little bit.
And that was kind of going to be my next question. You know, where are police currently, and what kind of an effect is that having on the crowd where you're at right now? But it sounds like they are moving, they are in motion, and that is something going on right now, Jamal?
Yes, Nick, the protesters are fighting amongst themselves. Obviously, I'm not sure what divisions, if any, are in those groups of people who have gathered here. I know originally this was a Black Lives Matter protest. I don't know what type of people are here now. All I know is a small skirmish just broke out amongst the protesters themselves. Things are starting to be squashed, and people are asking people to leave the area, as if to say, if you're going to be here causing fights, you can leave. But that situation, Nick, seems to have been squashed for the time being.
All right, good.
To answer your other question about police presence, again, once the police moved down to the corner, after they let off a couple of rounds of tear gas, they haven't done anything but stand there. And them standing there, just their presence on that corner, has caused this entire area to clear out. This is where the most damage was being done, but now that the police are standing there, people have gone in the opposite direction.
Jamal, you've said a couple of times so far tonight that you have not seen police being in any kind of an aggressive manner with the protesters. Has that been consistent throughout the night that you've seen?
Just with my eyes, I cannot speak for anybody else. I cannot speak for any other location. What I have seen is people throwing things at the police, people getting in the face of police, people screaming in the face of police, and I have not seen the police put their hands on anyone as of yet. I have seen the police throw canisters of tear gas. I have seen the police tell people to back up, but I've not seen the police get physical with protesters as of now.
Okay.
Again, Nick, at this point in time, people are throwing water bottles at the police situated right here on the corner, and the police aren't doing anything in retaliation.
Okay, yeah, and I obviously wouldn't ask you to comment on anything you don't see with your own eyes, and people feeding that garbage fire in the middle of the street. Thankfully, the Secretary of State's office did not catch fire earlier as people looked like they were attempting to do so.
Definitely, and I think we're going to send it to Nate Belt, who's also out there tonight. Nate, where are you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, Sarah, we're actually kind of on the other side of Division from where Jamal is. I can actually see him in that direction. We're on the other side of the police station where more people have started to gather. We've got people up on top. These barriers here, these are construction barriers that were normally out, but people are up on top of those now. We got people with signs, and as I was listening to Jamal say, just want to reiterate to you as well, we haven't seen any of the police put their hands directly on anybody, but of course, tear gas has gone off, and that is kind of the disbursement that we've seen right now. No altercations between the protesters and the police directly putting their hands on each other. So,
Yeah.
of course, continuing to monitor that situation, trying to look around to see where people have gathered. It definitely is less people that were out here than a few hours ago. A lot of people have dispersed, but there still is quite a large number of people here downtown Grand Rapids.
All right, Nate, thank you. At least from what Nate is saying, what he is seeing, there's less people than there were a couple hours ago. We don't know if they're just shifting positions. Jamal says, from where he was standing, he hasn't seen a necessary decrease in numbers. We have seen the tear gas, as Nate knows all too well. He got a face full of that earlier. So yeah, it's what we've seen as we're coming up on 11:42 here at night. In just the last hour or so, we've seen more tear gas. We've seen them bust through the windows of the Secretary of State's office in the same building, by the way, as the police headquarters. The fire in the alley behind Buffalo Wild Wings, and it is not a good scene at all right now in downtown Grand Rapids.
Certainly not. And we spoke to Sergeant Adams earlier, who said this was an unlawful assembly. So anybody who is down there now could be arrested, and that he couldn't confirm any arrest at that time. That was a few hours ago, but he said that anybody who is still there who was not left could be arrested at this time.
Nor have we seen any with the several cameras that we have in downtown Grand Rapids. We haven't seen any arrests take place. The most really dramatic thing involving someone who is downtown was the woman who had to be taken off on a stretcher. Our report at the time, that was maybe about a half hour ago, she'd collapsed for some unknown reason. We don't know why she went down. We came into that situation while EMS was assisting her. She was alert, she was conscious, she was talking to them, and as she was being carried away, our reporter, Jamal Spencer, said she looked like it was not serious. So no, we haven't seen any serious injury. We haven't seen any arrests, but we have seen fires. We have seen significant property damage at several locations. We've seen graffiti all over the place. And I'll reiterate, it is not a good scene in Grand Rapids, as it is not a good scene in much of the nation tonight, as it has not been for the better part of a week.
Absolutely. And Nick, you joined me a little late. I don't know if we can pull up a scene just of what we had seen earlier in the day. I'd like to show you some of the picture that we've seen earlier as opposed to what we're seeing right now. I think apart from being day to night, it was a very different scene. Right here, it seems like there is still a pretty large group of people. We're not exactly sure.
Yeah, I don't know if this is live video. We're seeing a recorded video. We've taken down our. Yeah, this is not live. We've taken down our live bug.
So even a few hours ago, there were more people than we're seeing in our live shots right now. And when it was still daylight, there were certainly a lot of people gathered there. So people are leaving, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you hate to say you expect it to get worse, as you kind of alluded to a couple of hours ago. When the sun goes down, things do tend to get worse in these situations. That has borne out here in West Michigan, in downtown Grand Rapids. Okay, and we're going to go, we're getting the call from Nate Belt in downtown. Nate, what do you have for us?
Yeah, hey, guys, take a look right behind me right now. People are throwing things into the windows. There goes another water bottle. People smashing the windows here at the GRPD. We're on the Monroe Center side. The windows are going out right now. It's just hearing loud shattering of glass every couple of seconds. People throwing things into the windows. I saw someone with it looked like a crowbar earlier, just a few minutes ago, smashing the windows. We had people throwing things. There's glass all over the ground. This is, again, there goes a street sign. A street sign just went directly into the GRPD. Again, we're on the Monroe Center side. People have moved over here from where Jamal was, seeing that glass breaking on the other side over on Fulton. But the windows are out here right now. Again, someone has a no parking sign just about to go through the window, I believe, right here. Yep, they are picking it up. Got a few people trying to get it, and it is about to go through. Just a crazy scene right now, seeing all the windows being smashed.
And Nate, be cautious. There's every reason to believe that police may be coming in your location soon. It's distressing that this is Grand Rapids. This is our home, and we understand people's frustrations. But nobody wants to see this.
No, certainly not. And we've seen live pictures from Detroit tonight. We've seen it in New York. This is happening in cities all across the country. Again, this is in response to the death of George Floyd, the 46-year-old unarmed black man that died in police custody in Minneapolis. Protests happening in Minneapolis, New York, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta. Nick, you mentioned yesterday's video, the images coming from the CNN Media Center. They had done some damage there, and here we are Saturday night. Here we are, Grand Rapids.
And not to cut you off, but I want to read a tweet right now that I'm reading from Catherine Falder. She's an investigative reporter, covers the White House and Capitol Hill for ABC News. This is what she tweeted half hour ago actually now, and I'm just seeing it. She said there's mounting pressure inside the White House for President Trump to make a formal address to the nation from the White House amid the chaos and unrest erupting across the United States. She's got sources. She's crediting herself and another reporter. So will we hear from President Trump tonight? We do not know. But again, this is happening all over the nation. So just again, on the nationwide level, we may well, according to that ABC News investigative reporter, there are at least conversations going on in the West Wing right now about whether or not President Trump is going to address the nation sometime tonight, as we're coming up on almost 11 o'clock now.
Right. The scene last night, and I think again tonight in Washington, D.C., very much, I don't want to compare it to what we're seeing in Grand Rapids, but a very...
White House went on lockdown.
Yes, it was a scene for the past few nights, and here we are the fourth night in, right? And here we are in Grand Rapids. I think this is a very powerful moment.
Yeah, and I believe that earlier today, for a brief moment, some barricades were breached at the White House as well. I saw another report, I believe it was WCCO, which is the CBS affiliate out of Minneapolis. One of their reporters was arrested this evening. And we saw with the CNN reporter who was arrested yesterday morning in Minneapolis. This is a tense scene in many cities all around the nation. No one more so probably than Minneapolis, the epicenter of all of this. And I think on the lower left-hand side of our screen, we're looking into downtown Grand Rapids. You see a line of several police in tactical gear. I don't know, is that, and if my producer Denise, is that pre-recorded video or is that live right now? I think that's actually a still picture from earlier tonight. We're waiting to hear back from some of our reporters on scene. The most recent thing, and probably the most distressing thing that we've seen so far, is the damage being done to the Grand Rapids Police Headquarters building, specifically the Secretary of State's office on the end of that building. Windows have been busted through. Earlier tonight there were protesters who were trying to ignite it on fire. Thankfully that did not work. And we also had the fire behind the Buffalo Wild Wings in an alley. At first we thought it was the Buffalo Wild Wings building. Thank goodness that was not the case. The camera we had, you saw the smoke plume coming right behind it, and it wasn't until we got in a little bit closer we realized it was an alleyway behind. But yes, this is a night that has gone from peaceful to bad to worse in the span of about 5 hours.
Definitely, and again, I know our people behind the scene are working very hard. If we can eventually get some video, if we can show people what it looked like earlier today when it was daylight, 6 o'clock, 6:30. This was probably from earlier when it was still dark out, which is a much bigger crowd. This is not live video, but a very different scene, and yeah, it deteriorated pretty quickly. I believe we're gonna head to Kylie Ambu, who is out in the field as well. She's been covering all night. Kylie, where are you, and what are you seeing?
So we are at the corner of Fulton and Ionia, and you can see behind me here, it's a bit of a standstill right now. We've got state police officers who are armed, coating the streets. They have some fire personnel.
All right, we're having problems with Kylie's microphone, so we're going to pull out real quick, and we're going to let them address that real briefly. We're having a hard time hearing her. Kylie, we apologize, but you saw, again, line of officers, which is the scene you see most often in situations like that. Line of officers, lined up protesters on the other side. And again, only speaking from one reporter's vantage point, Jamal Spencer, with his eyes, only what he has seen in the locations he has seen, he has not seen any police officers and any protesters get physical with another. He has been describing protesters as getting in the face of police officers, throwing water bottles at them. They have not responded in a physical manner other than with disbursement materials like tear gas.
And as I told you, I spoke to Chief Payne earlier today, and he said his message to the protesters was that I hear you. So he did, he didn't come at it in a negative way and feels with these with these protesters, rather he understands their pain and why they were out there today.
Lower left-hand screen there is ABC News special report showing you what's going on in Los Angeles right now. Go ahead and take again, large crowds of people outside businesses, damage, graffiti. It's a scene, again, you've seen repeated for 4 nights now in various cities all across the nation. Still daylight, of course, in Los Angeles, California. Lots of looting going on in certain countries. Not going to say whether or not that's going on right now, but the cut line there you see at the bottom of the screen sums it up. Violent protests erupt in numerous cities all around the U.S. Grand Rapids is not immune from that tonight. Terry Moran there sitting in the anchor desk for ABC News this evening in New York, anchoring their coverage. If we want, we can go ahead and listen in real quick to what's going on in L.A.
Significant looting happening,
And actually, no, instead, Kylie Amber, we've got that microphone issue fixed. Kylie, we saw there was a line of officers just to your right, and it looks like things are at least in a standstill with the protesters right now.
So we are on the corner of Fulton and Ionia, and as I said earlier, you can see on the side, armed state policemen have coated the streets. They also have assistance from fire personnel a little bit further up. Some of those firefighters are tending to a fire that hit over near the Back 40 Saloon just earlier. Now, this strip has been pretty popular here amid the protests. It was the same area the officers were pushing protesters down over onto Louis Street, and then protesters were able to come back to this strip only to be barricaded again by a blocked police force that wouldn't let them leave the area. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now as well. There's heavy police force and people aren't quite sure where they can and cannot move. Police officers have been kind of telling them, hey, stay back, or yes, you can come forward, but the communication between the two has been pretty minimal. Something to also note here, this was the strip that protesters were tear gassed on just earlier. So if you were on the right or left sides of this street, you did get hit. Right now, this is the scene that we're looking at, and everything is kind of at a standstill, but we'll be sure to keep you updated as things progress here in Grand Rapids. Kylie Ambu, 13 on your side.
Thank you,
All right,
Kylie.
and real quick, yeah, we heard something behind Kylie real quick. We don't know what it was, maybe another flashbang. We heard something, but she said stand still, and a standstill is better than what we saw earlier with the broken glass and the attacks on the Secretary of State's office. So she's in a different location. We'll take a standstill at worst, hopefully.
For sure. Now, tear gas. You mentioned the tear gas, and I'm actually getting text messages from my friends who were there. I don't know exactly where they were located, but 2 of them have mentioned that they walked into the tear gas when they were there, and we saw Nate Belt had walked into it, our reporter, a little while earlier. So that was down there, and that's a very painful. Nick, I've never been involved with tear gas, but you said it is not a pleasant experience.
No, I don't recommend it for anyone. Not a good time. I had that experience in East Lansing during a few sports protests. Nate Belt rejoining us now. Nate, it looks like things are a little quieter where you are. Is that accurate? Okay, having another microphone issue. We're going to get that fixed, and we'll get back to Nate Belt because he's got something to tell us. We don't know quite what it is yet. Yeah, again, I think there's probably just a power button on the microphone. We'll get that taken care for you right away.
Now, it does see the scene we're looking at now. I'm not sure if this is where Kylie is or where Jamal is.
This is where Kylie is. Yeah, this is exactly where Kylie was.
It does look still. For lack of, I know she said things were at a standstill, and that is a good thing. It does look very still here as opposed to what we had just seen earlier with things being thrown, glass being broken, fires trying to be set. So this is, I don't want to call it a good sign, but it looks a better scene than was earlier.
It's like I said a few minutes earlier, I'll take a standstill over violence being done to a building. Kylie mentioned you might, if you're joining us just now, so we're coming up on 11 o'clock, she had mentioned a fire near the Back 40 Saloon. I'm assuming she's referring to the alley fire that we at first thought was in or around the Buffalo Wild Wings in downtown Ionia, just up from Van Andel Arena. It was in an alleyway behind there. We still don't know exactly what was on fire. It was something small, which looked a lot worse. Someone eventually put it out just with a fire extinguisher, we believe. I think that's what she was referring to. Things do look hopefully a little bit calmer because we had that fire Jamal Spencer was telling us earlier, and we had video of people smashing the glass at the Secretary of State's office, which is in the same building as the Grand Rapids Police Headquarters. Someone was actually taking some sort of a long piece of cloth or something, a banner, trying to set it on fire. Thankfully, that did not work. Line of police officers there, and again, as Jamal said, no one has gotten truly physical with one another. Seems as though everyone has restrained themselves, so thank goodness for small miracles in that aspect. And police are moving here. They're advancing somewhere, and we're going to stay on this shot if we could, just to see reclaiming a little bit more of that street. Actually coming pretty close to where our photographer is. Obviously batons in hands, as you would expect.
Barriers up there. We see some barriers.
Yeah.
Not sure if they were moved by protesters, which Jamal had reported seeing earlier. Jamal also reported he kind of felt that there was protester versus protester confrontation.
Yeah.
Not so much confrontation, but just arguing and a lot of loud bantering.
Yeah. So let's address that for a minute. Let's address that clearly for a minute, because in many cities across the nation, there have been reports, and in Minnesota they said the governor there, and actually we're getting a quick note, thank you Catherine, the governor in Minnesota had said that a lot of the arrests that happened there the last couple of nights were people from out of state. And there are people concerned that white nationalists are getting involved with these protests and causing damage, and hoping, to be perfectly frank, to make the black community look worse. We don't have any confirmation of that here in Grand Rapids.
Right.
That's stuff we may figure out after the fact. We've got a large vehicle coming in here, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, something's coming in. If we can get Kylie Ambu back to let us know what we're seeing here when we get a chance, if our producer can get her back on the line as soon as possible. But anyway, just to button up that point about some of the violence and damage that you see, and Kylie's getting into position for us right there. We don't know. It's a fire truck, obviously, now. We'll find that out after the fact. Kylie's in position, so let's go to Kylie Ambu now.
So just an update here on the scene at Fulton and Iowa. Fire trucks have now made their way down the street. We are standing very close to some of the armed police personnel who are on the strip next to us right here. Right now, they are letting this car go down right over by Grand Rapids Brewing Company, if you're familiar with that. They're letting some of them clear out. Now, earlier, this strip is where others got tear gassed as they were trying to find a way escaping this route. So right now they're keeping that area closed.
All right. Again, we apologize for the microphone on Kylie's part. We're joined now on the phone by City Manager Mark Washington. Mark, we appreciate you being with us. This is a rough night. What are your thoughts and emotions as you see what's happening to the city of Grand Rapids right now?
Well, it's certainly very unfortunate, and we know that it began with peaceful intentions, but that has not been the outcome, and it's very disappointing. While we certainly understand the frustrations that are upon people nationwide, it does not help our community to destroy our community. And I don't know how many of the people who are participating in the vandalism are from this area or not, but it is totally unacceptable, and I'm looking forward to holding accountable participants in the violent destruction, as well as talk to some of the organizers of this effort about their awareness and knowledge of what has happened tonight.
Okay.
Very unacceptable.
Mark, you're not the mayor. You don't run the police department. But I suppose my question is, the police officers we've been seeing have been restraining themselves quite a bit. Do you expect arrests? We've not heard of anything confirmed so far.
Yeah, I don't know the number of arrests that have been made, but yeah, the police officers are authorized to restore law and order in our city and use reasonable force, as well as to make the arrests as need be, because people are not listening to lawful commands. And it appeared that the march that was supposed to go from Rosa Parks Circle to the Calder, detour to the police department, and it appears that based on what was done in Minneapolis, that the police headquarters was the primary focus in attack. We had several attempts to vandalize, destroy, break in, and the police department, and so that was a primary focus. Our officers, not only in our department but other supporting law enforcement agencies, were supportive in helping to restore order. But our officers did use gas to disperse the crowd and to try to get a hold of some of our streets. And as the crowds are dispersing, what we're seeing is some pockets of looting and vandalism that we're again trying to get a handle on.
It sounds like you are in pretty good communication with law enforcement right now. Are they seeing the crowds reduce at this point now as we
the
discuss
crowds have
11 o'clock hour?
dissipated. I'm here at the police department with the police chief, so they are strategically coordinating the deployment of resources, and our officers have just performed very, very outstanding on this evening. They've used appropriate force. They've de-escalated when appropriate, and it appears the roles have reversed. The excessive force is not being done tonight by law enforcement, but by civilians, and they're the ones that we're asking to de-escalate this situation.
Okay, Mr. Washington, last question before we let you get out. Are you and the mayor at all considering any kind of a curfew moving forward for the city of Grand Rapids?
Yeah, we're having policy discussions at this point on how to ensure that we don't have any repeated efforts. Right now, officers are given lawful commands and arresting anyone that's not following them are authorized to do so, and so those are among the things we'll consider. We got to get through tonight first, and then begin thinking about the restoration of our community. And what makes this very disappointing and challenging is that before we were already impacted by the public health crisis and the pandemic, and businesses were already hurting because of lack of patronage. And now, whatever attempts to hurt the police department ended up hurting businesses that were already hurting, those that were vandalizing it. And so clearly the efforts are misaligned and misaimed, and they're misinformed. And it's just a very, very disappointing. And I'm hoping that the public wants accountability of law enforcement, and we're committed to that. We need to have the accountability of the public as well.
All right, Grand Rapids City Manager Mark Washington. Mark, we appreciate your time very much, and you stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
We're going to toss it to Emma Nicholas. I believe she is downtown right now.
Since George Floyd died, there's been a ton of outright lies surrounding the killing and demonstrations that have followed. And actually, I tell you what, folks, we're going to reset here real quick. It has been a fourth night of protests all over the United States, and it is the first big night of protests here in Grand Rapids. I'm Nick Lefebvre, that is Sarah Makuda, and we are following the developments here in Grand Rapids and around West Michigan. We had a Black Lives Matter protest that started off at 6 o'clock. It started off peaceful. As the night wore on, that did not happen, and we're going to reset the show here for you right now. A night of protests across West Michigan and around the nation. Thousands descended on downtown Grand Rapids tonight to demand justice for George Floyd.
He died earlier this week in Minneapolis after a police officer kneeled on his neck for several minutes during an arrest. This is the video captured by a witness and sparked national outrage.
The protest began peacefully in Grand Rapids around 6 o'clock tonight, quickly became tense as the sun set, and then it became violent. We have team coverage beginning with 13 on your sides. Emma Nicholas, who joins us now from downtown Grand Rapids. Emma.
That's right. Good evening, guys. I'm on Division, where, as you can see behind me here, the police have completely barricaded this intersection where it was such a different scene hours ago. I mean, there were so many people packed in this intersection with signs united by a sole thing that they wanted to do by having this protest, and it just looks completely different. I mean, there's barricades and tear gas has been thrown. When we were walking up this way, there was gas in the air. And the crowds have largely thinned out. We're not seeing hardly as many people at all. So definitely there's a small number of people here, but there are still people here.
Okay. Emma Nicholas, I believe we're going to go to Kylie Amber, who is also downtown right now. Kylie.
Well, there still is a heavy police presence here on the strip at the corner of Fulton and Ionia. So next to me, there are armed state police officers, and the cars that join them go all the way down to the end of this road. Now, coming over further this way, we just saw earlier more tear gas had been deployed. At this time, the fire trucks that were over here treating a fire that happened over near the Back 40 Saloon, those have been removed from the area, but some of the protesters were telling me earlier that they still cannot get to the areas that they want. So the roads are still being barricaded by police. You can see over this way, they're blocking this strip of the road, and the folks over here are waiting to find out what their next steps are. So we will keep you updated as situations unfold here in Grand Rapids. Kylie Ambu, 13 on your side.
Kylie, thank you very much. We're now going to bring in 13 on your side's Nate Belt. Nate has been in the middle of this for hours now, including at one point when he got just as much of a dose of the tear gas as anyone else downtown. He rejoins us now. Nate, we're glad you're feeling better. Glad you're looking better. Also glad to see that things seem to be a bit... Okay, what do you got, Nate?
Hey, yeah. Nick. Yeah, hey, we're actually taking a look. It looks like they're lighting a Molotov cocktail here. I'm not joking. I'm being very serious. We're going to step back. It looks like it is about to go through the window. This is a government building, a Kent County building. The windows are smashed. We just saw a stop sign go through the window. We got firecrackers on the ground. We are blocks away from the police station, and the action is still going on down here. We kind of had to take a step back to the car to get some batteries for our camera, and there was just destruction the whole way, not just at the police station, but this group of people is trying to get something on fire here. Yeah, you can probably see it right here as they step away. This is about to go through the window. Here we go. It looks like there may have been fire that got into the building here, but something was just tossed inside. We are going to keep an eye on that because this is a government building for the county here. Where are we? We are at Fountain and Division, I believe. But like I said, just windows smashed all the way down the street here. It's just everywhere. We actually just walked by several government cars as well, government-issued vehicles with logos on the side that had, one of them had a street sign straight through the windshield, windows blown out. We heard some tires slashed as well. Just destruction continuing, not just at the police station, down blocks away as well.
All right, Nate, thank you. We'll come back to you when we need to. Once again, it's the second attempt someone has made to try and set fire. That's the county government building. Earlier was the Secretary of State's office connected to the Grand Rapids Police Headquarters. We're going to go now on the phone to Ken James with the Grand Rapids Chamber Inclusion and Diversity team. Ken, I appreciate you joining us very much. I got to ask you the same question that I asked Mark Washington a little while ago. What are your emotions looking at and seeing everything that's going on right now in the city that we all love so much?
Absolutely. And first of all, as a black man, I do understand the frustration of the manifestation of the years of injustice that is going on in this community. But at the Grand Rapids Chamber, we do not condone violence. And obviously, we don't condone the destruction of property and businesses in our community. What I'm hoping is that we can opportunity, the energy from this to manifest ourselves in a way where we can come together and have reconciliation, but that reconciliation leads to some real change, and so that we can get rid of these injustices and come together as a community. So I'm hoping that we can collectively come together and do that. That's my greatest hope right now.
Yeah, Ken, you mentioned a moment ago, I mean, just first and foremost, you're a black man in America. You're also a leader in the black community for Grand Rapids. And this is a bit of a philosophical question. What does tomorrow morning look like in Grand Rapids, and where do we go from here?
You know, the tomorrow morning looks like, and I'm taking this from the glass half full, knowing how I feel, how we got here. What do we do to move it forward? What do we do to pivot positively? So where can we get to where we can make this real change that I'm talking about, so that we're not here at this place again? So I do believe, and this is my opinion, that some of the frustration lies with, we've heard it all before, we've seen it all before, and now we're tired, and we want to do something about it. So let's do something about it. Let's come together and make that real change. What that looks like is a collective effort. If I were to pick a word, it's unification. What can we do to unify across racial lines and come together to find consensus where we can coexist? I know it's there, and I know it sounds like a pipe dream, but I believe it's something we can do.
Not a pipe dream at all, Mr. James. We appreciate your time on a very, very difficult evening, and I'm sure we're going to be speaking to you looking forward. You be safe and your family as well tonight, Mr. James.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We're going to head back to Nate Belt. He is downtown, where there is a very active scene. Nate, tell us what's going on right now.
Yeah, guys, fireworks going off everywhere, and a little correction from where I was talking about earlier. We're at Fountain and Ionia right now. This government building windows are smashed out. Actually, through one of the windows, just not even seconds ago, a firework was tossed. A firecracker was tossed into the building itself, and it went on inside the building. Let's actually, Dan, let's keep walking down the street here. And let's, how about this way? How about this way? And we're just trying to show you that there's just a lot of people out here still, hours into this. Dan and I have been down here for pushing 2 hours right now. We've got stop signs in the street. Again, we are blocks away from the police department. You maybe can hear the windows being smashed right now. Giving you a look at that. And as we have mentioned also, throughout the night, tear gas has been going off. I took a face full of that earlier. Both me and our general manager, Dan, out here took a face full of that tear gas. Was not pleasant at all. Canister went off literally at our feet. Had to run away from that. It has just been one thing after the other out here. Things continuing to escalate. It was, when we got out here, it was relatively peaceful. Everything was going calm, but it has escalated as the hours have gone on. Windows being broken, things being smashed, cars being destroyed. It just, everywhere, it sounds like fireworks going off. So we are continuing to monitor that here at Fountain and Ionia.
Nate, you stand by. We'll be back to you in a bit. I'm sure we want to go back to 13 on your side's Kylie Ambush. She's in a different section of downtown, and she's been seeing some activity. Fire truck was rolling through there earlier. Kylie, what's the latest where you're at?
Well, just moments ago, more tear gas was deployed just up this street over here. You can still see some of the smoke, or I guess the gas over there, and people over in the street. So right now, I'm going to step out so you can see the shot. Right now, we're at the corner of Fulton and Ionia. That is just right up the strip across from the Grand Rapids Police Department. We know earlier there were a big group of people who were standing there with their signs. There were some there was, I guess, one person that I saw who was spray painting on the building that they wanted justice for George Floyd. And over here on this strip is where we know we saw tear gas earlier. There are some water bottles on the ground, and that's where a few select protesters were hurling them while others asked them to stop. A bit later, they were met with tear gas themselves, and since then, we've had multiple occasions of tear gas here on this strip. So we will keep you updated as more information comes in here in Grand Rapids. Kylie Ambu, 13 on your side.
Kylie, thank you. Stay safe out there tonight. We're going to toss it to Emma Nicholas, who is also in downtown GR. Not sure where she is right now. Emma, tell us where you are and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I'm on Fulton. Tear gas was just thrown. There was a crowd that was still over here. People have largely moved back because there's smoke and flashbangs that have been going off. up this road, which has largely pushed this crowd back here. I'll show you this way, where the crowd is now kind of moving into this direction, but people are still down here. As you can see, something's set on fire. I don't know if that fire was started from something that was thrown from either side, I'm not sure. But yeah, as you can see, the crowd has pushed back this way because of the tear gas that was just thrown. Repeated announcements asking people to get out of downtown, that this has become unlawful, what we've been hearing for the last few hours. Yeah, it's, as you can see, a lot of people have left, but there are still many people out here. Here, let's go this way.
Let's stay with this for a second.
It's not.
Emma, go ahead and finish up what you were going to say. I apologize.
I'm sorry, Nick. Say that one more time.
There's a delay. I was about to say something, but go ahead and finish up what you were going to say, please.
Oh no worries. Yeah, we're seeing more unrest. It's getting continuing to. The tensions have been high, but I'll say they seem to continue to get more intense as the police continue to encourage people to leave downtown, and they are still, many people are still here.
Okay. All right. You stand by. You stand by, Emma. You stay safe, and we'll be back to you in a bit. We've of course been covering, monitoring social media tonight as protesters move through the streets of Grand Rapids.
And Val Lego joins us now to share some of what the viewers have been saying to us. Val.
Of course, as you can imagine, so many people weighing in, and we've been keeping an eye on it tonight as things just begin escalating, as we just saw with Emma downtown. And we begin with this very powerful photo of downtown earlier tonight. You can see the sheer mass of people that were downtown protesting, a very, very intense photo. And it was bright skies and a lot of people, and we know that it began as a silent march through Rosa Parks Circle this evening, but many more have gathered downtown, as we've been reporting all evening long. Jen Bem tweeting earlier that the silent, peaceful protest originally planned for this evening did disperse. And so she says that those who are downtown right now are not part of the protest that was held earlier this evening. And so I guess that's something very important to remember as we look at the pictures that we're seeing. Michigan State Police have also been active online tonight, warning that protesters must clear the area. They fear this has become an unlawful demonstration. Gas, as we know, has been used. We just saw it. It's already being seen in many, many parts of downtown. And our digital producer, Rose White, has been downtown all evening, and she's been keeping us up to date with what she's been seeing. And she tweeted this powerful photo earlier, tear gas, of course, being sprayed on Fulton. So it's not the first time it was sprayed. It was just recently sprayed. It's happening all night long. She also tweeted that the door of the villa had been smashed, and people were just flocking out of it, trying to get to safety. And so we will continue to monitor what is happening on social media tonight, keep you updated on air and online. And this situation, I think, is a very sad time for Grand Rapids, because even though we have a lot of protests that do happen from time to time, they've always been peaceful. And this time they have kind of escalated to what we've been seeing around the country. Sarah, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. Val, thank you. And we're going to go quickly now to 13 Underside's Nate Belt. Nate, what is happening out there right now?
Stand by. Hey guys, just take a look at where we're at right now, back where we were at Fountain on Ionia. This dumpster is on fire. We stepped away literally for about 5 minutes and we came back to see it on fire. We've got people taking debris from that dumpster and throwing it into the building. This is 82 Ionia, Kent County government building. I haven't seen any police presence down this far down the street. I don't see any police here at all, but there is just ash in the air. We're taking you, I mean, take a look at that. Things on fire, things being tossed into these open windows. There, Dan, right here, to your right inside the building. We've got stuff on fire on a, looks like an x-ray machine right inside this government building. Again, just, I haven't even seen any police presence down here. I don't see any police in the area. Things have escalated very, very fast. People are smashing into this building here. We've got stop signs going through. People are using street signs to smash the window. Can feel the heat coming off these flames everywhere. It's just I have no words for right now what I'm seeing. Just got bumped into somebody, but yeah, we're trying to stay as safe as we can out here. Things have escalated at this intersection of Fountain and Ionia very, very fast. And again, like I mentioned, I don't see any police presence over here. So we're going to keep an eye on the situation, and I think we might need to get to a safer vantage point.
Yeah, go now. Go get safe, Nate. We're joined on the phone now by Kent County Commissioner Robert Womack. Mr. Womack, I appreciate you joining us, and this has been the first question I'm asking everyone. What are your emotions watching what is happening to Grand Rapids this evening?
Well, my emotions are, I would say at this time, highly disappointed, because I know the organizers of this event have asked for peace. I know that all the city leaders have been asking for peace and letting protesters know that any violence will undercut the message and will be a disgrace to the memory of George Floyd and others who have been victims of police brutality.
All right, Mr. Womack, I appreciate that. Grand Rapids is a city and its police department which has had its racial problems as well. The city has worked very hard to address that. We have an African-American chief. How do we move forward now in a time when we are seeing racial divisions in this country in a way that, frankly, I don't think we've seen since Rodney King?
Well, the George Floyd murder definitely pushed a lot of emotions to see a person's life taken in front of the world within 9 minutes and have an officer that's supposed to protect us end up actually taking somebody's life with a smile on his face while he's taking this man's life. But at the same time, with this happening in Minneapolis, I truly believe that a peaceful protest would have pushed the message far more than the mayhem that's going on tonight in the city of Grand Rapids. I've been out there able to stop some of the young people that I know, but we have people that have come from other localities in here. Not to say that some of them aren't local. Some of these young people are local citizens. But there was no way we could stop it all. And the police have put up with a whole lot. They were being hit by water bottles for over 6 hours. It was just unbelievable, some of the things I've seen today.
And Robert, the protest started out very peaceful. It was intended to be peaceful. To see this escalate, I know I spoke to Chief Payne earlier. He was disappointed to see that it didn't remain peaceful. What is your reaction to this escalation today?
My reaction is that it really had no end. It was a peaceful protest in the beginning. Throughout the entire night, I've been there all day, so I saw people coming as late as even now. I just watched a jewelry robbery between Ottawa. It was between Ottawa and Rosa Parks on Monroe Center, where people have broken the window, snatched jewelry, and continued to try to break into the door and get into the jewelry store. And just the spirit of watching people that are out there robbing, it doesn't seem like they came down to protest or honor George Floyd's memory. Some people have found it as an opportunity to do some things and benefit themselves by robbing jewelry stores, and it's just terrible. It's pitiful.
Can you remember anything like this in Grand Rapids history?
I was such a young baby in between watching the first riots in Grand Rapids in the late 60s, but in my memory, I haven't seen anything like this. And since then, and I could barely comprehend what I was seeing as a young child in Grand Rapids. But seeing this, it seems like the peaceful protesters were more angry than the ones who are actually throwing the rocks and robbing. It's almost like watching them rob and throw rocks and they're laughing. It's like they're having a ball, So it is really sad to see those two different spectrums of emotion. Angry people protesting peacefully, and people who think this is some type of joke out here laughing while they're breaking the windows.
And we are seeing live pictures next to you. Robert, when I spoke to Chief Payne earlier, something he said that really stood out to me, what his message was to the protesters is that I hear you. Does that resonate with you? Him making that decree to the protesters, we hear you.
I think that was a beautiful statement coming from Captain Payne. I also know that Captain Payne has been hearing the cries of the community even before he became the police chief. And I'd be amiss not to give credit to how far the Grand Rapids Police Department has come in the last 5 years, which that also shows as they, sat there getting spit on, getting hit with water bottles for over 6-7 hours today, and didn't move, didn't react. They've come a long way, but I think the public is saying we still have a long way to go.
All right, and yeah, I'm going to ask you one last question, Mr. Commissioner. Considering all the difficulties that Grand Rapids has in race relations with the police department, we've seen action plans and studies they've done to try and improve this situation. In spite of tonight, are you confident and are you happy with the progress that the department has made in that aspect?
I'm very happy with the progress that the police department has made, and at the same time, I'm glad they acknowledge that they still have more to do. And I know that we have some local situations also going on, but I know the majority of today's protesters came out because of what's happening in the national media. So it's not just GRPD, it's America marching today, and all of the anger that's been pent up for years and years and years is coming out tonight. So I think we have to throw the national element in there also.
All right, Kent County Commissioner Robert Womack, we are extremely grateful for your time tonight. We are sorry that it had to happen on a night like tonight, but we appreciate the time, and you be safe tonight, sir.
You too, thank you.
Thousands also packing into the streets of Kalamazoo tonight and into the afternoon and into the evening as well.
This is video of Bronson Park around 8 p.m. You can see protesters holding signs saying, "I can't breathe," and profanities against police officers. Earlier in the day, protesters marched toward the courthouse. From social media posts, it seemed the protests were largely peaceful. And on the east side of the state, protests in Detroit have also been declared an unlawful assembly. Police are asking protesters to leave or they will be arrested. Now, according to the Detroit Free Press, reporter on screen, gas was deployed by law enforcement around 10:30, shortly after protesters started throwing fireworks at the police.
And earlier today, some protesters were seen sitting in the street before marching down I-375 in the metro area. During protests last night in Detroit, a 21-year-old man was shot and killed. 60 people were arrested during those protests. The police chief said nearly 2/3 of those people were from the city's predominantly white suburbs of Warren, Farmington Hills, and West Bloomfield.
And elsewhere in the country, protesters continue to clash with police in large cities like Denver, Chicago, New York City, and Washington, D.C.
And many of them now under curfew. ABC's Katrina Mitchell has more on those protests.
Once again, peaceful protests turned violent in several cities across the nation following the death of 46-year-old George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. That city and at least 12 others under mandatory curfew tonight. Minnesota's governor, for the first time in 164 years, mobilizing the entire National Guard, some 11,000 members.
The situation in Minneapolis is no longer in any way about the murder of George Floyd. It is about attacking civil society, instilling fear, and disrupting our great cities.
A peaceful demonstration in Philadelphia Saturday afternoon growing violent. A police car set on fire. This disturbing scene in Bakersfield, California. A car speeding through a crowd, Luckily, no one was seriously injured, and a dramatic standoff between protesters and police in Chicago. In Seattle, the words "Don't kill us" spelled out by demonstrators. Several dozen protesters arrested here in New York City on Saturday after more than 200 arrests Friday night. The outrage erupting after Derek Chauvin, the white former Minneapolis police officer, was seen in this disturbing video pressing his knee into Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes.
Please, I can't breathe.
Chauvin now charged with third-degree murder and aggravated assault. 3 other officers involved in the arrest still under investigation. Last night, protest in the nation's capital turning violent. Today, protesters once again gathering near the White House. Some in Minneapolis see violence as their only option.
If we gotta do it the violent way, then that's what we're gonna do, because we're going to get answers one way or another.
But city officials were quick to point out some of those arrested are from out of state.
Those folks who are agitating and inciting are taking advantage of the pain, of the hurt, of the frustration, of the anger, of the very real and legitimate sadness that so many of our community members feel.
Karina Mitchell, ABC News, New York.
Okay, we're going to go back to 13 on your side's Nate Pelt in downtown Grand Rapids. Nate, last we talked to you, you were outside of the county building, and you guys had to move pretty fast. Things looked like they were starting to get unsafe. They're a little bit better now.
Yeah, Nick, the last time we were with you, we were in front of the prosecutor's building downtown at 82 Ionia. I'll step to the side. You can see we had no police presence just a few minutes ago. They actually just arrived not too long ago. We've got police, we've got sheriffs, we have some sort of riot vehicle up here as well, and a fire department. Several fire trucks just came through. I don't know where they went. The dumpster is still on fire, but there were fire crews out here. But again, they have gone, the folks have started to, move out of the intersection just a little bit, at least right in front of the building, because the police presence is here now. But yeah, things right here at a Fountain and Ionia, it seemed like it escalated really, really quick. It seemed like it went from nothing to just, I don't know if the crowd realized there was no police over here and no police presence, but now there is. And things have started to quiet down aside from that dumpster that's on fire. And I don't see the building on fire anymore, at least from where we're standing. But of course, we're keeping an eye on that from right here downtown.
All right, Nate, thank you very much. And folks, I'm joined by a familiar face right now, Catherine Barrett, here at 13 on your side. She's our community and program director. You know her best, obviously, the host of My West Michigan. Catherine, your heart has been a part of West Michigan about as long as anyone in this building and anyone in this region. What's your heart like right now?
Yeah, 33 years, and my heart is aching for this community. As a community relations manager here, I've worked with so many people who take such pride in our city and its people. And I've watched this unfold like everybody has over the course of the last week, and seeing what was going on in Minneapolis and so many other cities across our country, and thinking, wow, I can't imagine anything like that happening in Western Michigan. And I struggled with it. I've been shedding a lot of tears watching it and just thinking, what have we become? And I found a very powerful quote by the Reverend Martin Luther King that said, "Riots are the language of the unheard." Mm-hmm. Riots are the language of the unheard. What is America not hearing right now? And when you think about that, we talked about it on My West Michigan too. When you think about that and the intent of the original messaging around some of these protests, I get it, about police brutality and about finding a peaceful way that we can exist together. Mm-hmm. And the important thing to say about Grand Rapids, and we have to say it time and time again, there was a peaceful, silent protest earlier today.
Effective.
Effective. Beautiful gathering of people. We have, photos of it and video, and it was just a gorgeous day. And it's important to gather together and to weep for what has happened and to, plan for our future.
But something changed.
Something changed, and desperation motivates a lot of crazy stuff, right? And I try to get in the mindset and understand, but then when you see flames being thrown inside buildings mm-hmm. and windows cracked out like we're looking at now, and I keep on asking the why, and yet thinking about oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And I just, it's a sad day for Grand Rapids.
It is, and you know, and my heart is torn too, and you see it from many different directions, and we don't know yet about what changed from the early protest to late. We had a statistic, I don't know if you overheard it while you were getting mic'd up, but in Detroit, 60% of the arrests, or I think 2/3 of the arrests they had yesterday, were from the white suburbs. So, and there's been a lot of things going around the nation about white nationalists getting involved in these protests that cause destructions, and we don't know that. That is all purely speculation. We're going to know a lot more as the days and weeks go on about what happened here.
I can tell you something I know from all of the, the time that I've spent trying to work in that diversity and inclusion space in our community.
And she has, folks, believe you me.
If you want to be an ally to the communities of color, you don't pick up a weapon and bash in a window or throw fire into a building. That is not an effective way to be an ally. So cut it out. It was a beautiful, peaceful, planned protest in Grand Rapids. And all that it takes, I mean, I don't know that we'll ever know what was that turning point, but somebody allowed their anger to boil into something more, and then it's that sort of, mob mentality where people just join in. And I want us to solve the problems in our community, not create more. And so this is heartbreaking to me.
And I don't think anyone disagrees with you. And I talk with my friends. And I'm very blunt about this sometimes. You and I are white. You and I are white. And I say it this way, I am a straight white Christian male. No one has been discriminated against less than I have. And so the answers to these problems are hard. I try to empathize and like you said, try to be an ally, but you're right. Somebody went straight when they should have turned left to go to the Calder, that was originally how it was supposed to be. So the understanding has to be there from you, from me.
Yeah.
But no matter who you are, you're right, you can't start picking up bricks.
And then the other thing is you acknowledge your privilege.
Yeah.
And then you take that privilege in the circles in which you exist.
And what can you do with it?
And you do something with all of those gifts that you have been given simply because you were born that way, and you use it for the good. And there's lots of good happening in this community around this issue. There's a lot to be done, but it isn't busting out windows, and it isn't setting fire to the Secretary of State's office.
And before I let you go, Catherine, just someone who's without getting too specific, is a little senior on me and has been here in West Michigan longer than I have. I had asked Robert Womack, Kent County Commissioner, about how far we've come, because this has been a police department in an area that has had racial problems. I thought about Rodney King, and I was in middle school, I believe, but that's the last time I remember anything like this, and I was up in the UP at that time. Do you remember anything like this in Grand Rapids? Even going back to Rodney
33 years. So I was here when Rodney King happened, and there were people who cared intensely about that. And yes, this community has grappled with this issue for every one of the 33 years I've been here. We started a project at this station called Healing the Racial Divide because it was such a broken, sort of relationship, and we did a lot around that work as a station, which I'm super proud of. But I've never seen anything like this. Never. I've seen a lot of protests and demonstrations, covered them as a reporter, watched them on TV, anchored from the desk, and watched them in the studio, and I've not seen this.
Well, I agree with you. We will be better, and I'm going to say it flat. It's because of people like Catherine Barrett as well. No one loves this place more than you do.
Well, I do love it.
Yeah, all right, Catherine, thank you very much. We are now going to go back to 13 on your side's Nate Belt, who's in downtown Grand Rapids. Nate, it's been a few minutes since we've talked to you. What's the latest there?
Yeah, Nick, we've had to move down the street because, as I mentioned, the law enforcement did arrive down at the intersection there. One of the law enforcement vehicles actually had I don't know if it was a brick or a stone or something thrown through it. The back windshield of that car is completely blown out, and that prompted another barrage of tear gas out here at the intersection. So we had to move down the street just a little bit to get out of the way of that. But again, that fire in that dumpster is still blazing here in front of 82 Ionia. We are keeping an eye on that. Like I said, the fire crews were out here, but they have gone and left that fire to burn. People just out here spectating at this point. And occasionally, like I said, a cop car had its windows smashed out by something not too long ago. So again, just keeping an eye on what's going on. They're keeping people away from that fire. There is a line of officers up there keeping people away from that dumpster and keeping people away from the buildings. But it just seems like just every couple minutes or so you hear more glass breaking in the area. We're going to get way out of this car that's driving down here. But yeah, it's just every couple minutes more glass is breaking, more things are thrown, and we're finding just little fires throughout the downtown area.
All right, Nate, we appreciate it very, very much.
All right, Nate, thank you. We have been continuing to monitor social media tonight as well as protesters move through the streets of Grand Rapids. Yeah, Val Lego back with us from the newsroom with more on what the viewers are saying, Val.
And Nick and Sarah, I just want to interject a little bit before we get to that, I've had a lot of people contacting me within the community that I have connections with saying that they want us to remind everyone that the peaceful protest has ended. And what we're seeing right now is not part of that peaceful protest. And it's very important for those who organize the peaceful protest to make people understand that this is not just one big thing. There were two separate things happening right now. And so they just really want from the bottom of their hearts to make people understand that there's a peaceful protest and then there's what's happening right now. And so we are, of course, keeping an eye on what's happening downtown, and we're going to begin with this very powerful photo of the peaceful protest. You can see the sheer mass of people that were downtown. They were protesting, but peacefully, right? And so we know that this began as a silent march through Rosa Parks Circle, and many, many, many gathered. Jen Beam tweeting earlier that the silent peaceful protest, as I mentioned, planned for earlier, has dispersed, and she says those who are downtown right now are not part of that. Michigan State Police have also been active online tonight, warning protesters that they must clear the area, which they don't seem to be doing, because it has become an unlawful demonstration. And tear gas has been released, as we have seen, both through video, and unfortunately our reporters have also experienced. And our digital producer, Rose White, has been downtown all evening. She's been keeping us up to date, and she's tweeted this powerful photo earlier of tear gas being sprayed at Fulton. And she also tweeted that the door of the villa had been smashed and people were, flocking to it. And that's very, very, very sad. So we're going to continue to keep you up to date with everything that's happening on air and online. But, as Catherine said, like, my heart aches as well. I have been here 15 years, and it's very sad to see something like this happening in our city. And I know there's a lot of good that can be done, and I hope that we find a way to turn things around, come together, and really find a way out of this. Nick and Sarah?
Amen, okay. Val. Amen. And I want to reiterate the point that Val just made, because, to be perfectly frank, I hadn't thought about this yet either. There was a peaceful protest. And I think the easy thing to assume is that it morphed or transitioned into a violent protest or riot. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, probably, you'd like to think, hopefully the majority of people who were at that peaceful protest went home. They're not a part of this. A good way to put it is the second protest, which might be probably a completely different group of people. So I'm glad Val brought that up, because that was an important point to make.
100%. And from seeing the earlier scene to seeing the scene that we're looking at now, it is a very different scene. Yeah. So I think what she said is yep. absolutely spot on, and I 100% agree with that. Yep. Well, next to Washington, President Trump tweeting this morning he watched every moment of the protest outside the White House before unleashing a warning about what may come tonight.
ABC's Rachel Scott is at the White House with more.
Tonight, President Trump sending a mixed message. On one hand, discouraging the violence erupting on American streets.
I stand before you as a friend and ally to every American seeking justice and peace. And I stand before you in firm opposition to anyone exploiting this tragedy to loot, rob, attack, and menace.
But continuing to use violent rhetoric. First tweeting a message to protesters in Minneapolis, writing, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." Later saying he didn't know its racist past.
Well, I've heard that phrase for a long time. I don't know where it came from, where it originated.
Today, the president singled out Antifa and radical left demonstrators, even as state officials say groups could also include anarchists and white supremacists. while seeming to send a cryptic message to his supporters, tweeting, "It's MAGA night at the White House."
But I have no idea if they're going to be here. By the way, they love African American people. They love black people.
Tonight, protesters beginning to gather at the president's door.
You can see some of the damage from this weekend's protest. Officials have blocked off the area to get into Lafayette Park. This is the closest any of these protesters are going to get to the gates of the White House.
Last night, some turning violent, throwing bricks, rocks, and bottles at Secret Service, ripping down barricades. The White House put on temporary lockdown. The president said he watched every move from inside, warning if those protesters breached the fence, they would have been greeted with the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons. The mayor of D.C. calling his words an attack on humanity and black people.
To make a reference to vicious dogs is no subtle reminder to African Americans of segregationists who let dogs out on women, children, and innocent people.
All right, that was Rachel Scott in Washington. We're coming up quarter to midnight here, so this has all been going on for about 6 hours. So we're going to take a moment to reset, go right back to the top. And the video that we're going to roll is from earlier tonight. It probably isn't going to be queued up exactly to what we're speaking about. But this all began at 6 o'clock this evening with the Black Lives Matter silent protest in response to the George Floyd killing in Minneapolis, Minnesota earlier this week at the hands of a police officer who had his knee on the back of his neck for upwards of 9 minutes. That protest for that time at Rosa Parks Circle was peaceful. There were no problems. It was exactly what you would hope to see out of any peaceful protest in the United States.
And as the march moved down toward the GRPD, the headquarters in downtown Grand Rapids, it seemed to escalate. Protesters chanting, and then as night fell, we started to see a very different scene emerge tonight. As
night fell, temperatures rose. We had the fire in an alley behind Buffalo Wild Wings. We have had damage to multiple buildings all throughout downtown. The windows to the Secretary of State's office have been crashed in. They attempted to set a fire there. We were talking with, I believe it was Kent County Commissioner Womack, who had talked about a jewelry theft in the area of Monroe Center. Tear gas dispersed for all over the place for a continual amount of time. It has been a bad night in Grand Rapids, and fortunately where we're at now, it seems as though the crowds are, again, this is not live video, the crowds are beginning to disperse. It is now considered an unlawful gathering. You can be arrested. We've not heard about any arrests yet. I'm sure we're going to hear about a lot more tomorrow morning, but the police don't want you there, and if you are there, you can be arrested. Now, since George Floyd died, there have been a ton of outright lies surrounding his killing and the demonstrations that have followed.
We've had our Verify team breaking down some of the most viral claims, and here's our Jason Puckett.
We want to focus on 3 viral photos right now. We're separating them by ones we verified are true, false, and that can't be verified yet. First, this photo of a McDonald's on fire. It spread on Reddit and Twitter with people linking it to the protests in Minneapolis. It's actually a photo from 2016 after a grease fire in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. So we're moving that to false. Next, this photo of a building on fire posted on multiple social media sites with people asking if it was actually real. Well, a reverse image search took us to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune's website. They're the largest newspaper in Minnesota. The Star-Tribune shows the same building from the same angle on Wednesday. The building was a new affordable housing complex that hadn't yet opened. We can verify this picture. Finally, a video many of you have sent us of a man breaking windows at an AutoZone in Minneapolis. There's a lot to this. First, we saw a post that he was a white man, quote, sabotaging the protests. While we're looking into these claims, we can't independently verify his identity or motive, so right now we're leaving those questions in the unverified category. The most shared claims about this video are posts claiming that the man is actually an officer with the St. Paul Police Department. The St. Paul Police Department has publicly stated it was not their officer. With your Verify, I'm Jason Puckett.
All right, rejoined now by My West Michigan's Catherine Barrett to talk a little bit more about what's going on in Grand Rapids tonight. And we'd established a little bit earlier this is unlike anything you had ever seen in Grand Rapids for, even going all the way back to Rodney King, for which you were here. And I believe you're still working at the station at the time as well. Grand Rapids is just frankly looking a lot more like what happens in other cities. And that makes me not just sad, it makes me uncomfortable. And I know there got to be a lot of people at home thinking the same thing right now.
Yeah. Well, I think a little discomfort is healthy, Nick. Okay. I think we should all be uncomfortable because it is emblematic of a problem that exists in the community, a challenge that we must all face together. So a little discomfort. Unless it's fear or, I don't know, I guess I'm putting a meaning on your discomfort.
No,
but
I'm right there with you actually on that. It's good to be made uncomfortable because change comes from that. And I think there's a difference between being uncomfortable. It's what you do with that discomfort, I think maybe is where I think about it.
Well, I talked earlier about watching all this stuff unfolding in cities and elsewhere in the country and was trying to imagine and then heard that there was a silent protest plan for Grand Rapids. And I said, oh, that's the way Grand Rapids does things. Mm-hmm. That's going to be beautiful. I wonder if I should go to that. You know, I haven't been to a grocery store in 3 months, but I said, maybe I should go to that, you know? And so, I just thought Grand Rapids would do it the way they always do, which is meaningful, but again, there's a problem that exists that must be addressed.
Yeah. And I want to echo what you just said about being kind of surprised with the turn that this took tonight, because in a normal circumstance, I think, you know, I work Monday through Fridays. I'm a Monday through Friday evening anchor here with Juliet, who just happens to be off right now. And in a normal circumstance, I would think, okay, we're in the middle of a very big racial problem in America right now.
Yeah.
That is not stemmed from this death. The racial problem goes back further, obviously, than George Floyd's death, but it has sparked
It's gotten
fire.
gas, yes.
And under normal circumstances, there's a silent protest going on in Grand Rapids on Saturday. I would have said, I'm just going to come into work. But I didn't think. I think like you did, that it would have taken this turn. So it wasn't until about maybe 7:30 tonight, I'm like, I need to go in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because I spent so much time over the week crying about it and thinking about it, imagining it, that maybe I was not so surprised when it went that way, more disappointed.
Yeah.
Really disappointed that it did. And to see people, you know, lighting fires and bashing in windows, and that was, you know, a big disappointment.
Question I asked earlier to Ken James with diversity and inclusion
at the
with
chamber.
Yeah. I asked him, what does tomorrow morning look like in Grand Rapids? You've been here a long time. You have the pulse of the city about as well as anyone. What do you think tomorrow morning looks like in Grand Rapids?
I think it looks like the morning after a lot of crazy partying went on, you know, like people walking around kind of shell-shocked, like, what did I do or what happened last night, you know? Yeah. And wow, the cleanup, the rebuild, the repair, that's the physical stuff, right? Then there's the hard work. You get out a broom, you'll sweep up all that glass, but what is beneath it, what must be cleaned up, is far greater than that. And so what I hope tomorrow looks like is that a lot of the people who were down on those streets during the peaceful part of the protest are gathering in groups and looking for ways that we can come around this issue in our community and tackle it from all sides. And again, like I said before, as allies, looking for the tools that we have at our disposal and finding ways. If you're a school teacher, how can you weave a message of inclusion into your lessons for your kid? Now, gosh, teachers are challenged right now with an immense job. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now and this, but perhaps it is the severity of all of the circumstances we face right now that has made this be thrust into a greater sense of urgency, and maybe that's what we need.
And maybe a newfound appreciation. We already have a great appreciation for the organizations and nonprofits that work on inclusion in our community. They do fantastic work, but maybe another harder, real look at the socioeconomic problems that lead to racial problems in American West Michigan as well, because there are all kinds of avenues there that The lieutenant governor has his commission right now looking at what COVID-19 is affecting the black community. The mortality rate so much higher.
There's so many people who can tell him he doesn't have to form a committee.
No, exactly, exactly. But those types of things you look at, I mean, it's a racial problem, and I think you're just seeing a different one manifestation of racial disparity in this country is the mortality from COVID-19. Another symptom of that racial disparity is what we're seeing, I think, on display in Grand Rapids tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
So so I think it's, in addition to like the positive rhetoric that you're talking about, there's some serious shovelfuls of work that we're going to have to get dirty and do here.
Yeah, and I hope that it starts tomorrow. And then tomorrow, there are peaceful protests planned in Muskegon and in Holland, and I hope people in those communities are looking at this and saying, we're going to do better than that. Yeah. We are going, it's important. I think gathering together, I mean, that's what we have to do. So that peaceful part of our day today, there's power in that. Yeah. So I hope that that's the way those will go down tomorrow while we're over here cleaning up the glass.
Val Lego made a good point, though, and I'd like to get your input on this as well, because you talk about we're going to do better than Grand Rapids did today. Val made the astute point, I think, that it wasn't necessarily a peaceful protest turning violent in Grand Rapids tonight.
No, two things.
It was two separate things of different groups of people. And so if you're in Muskegon tomorrow night, what do you do to make sure that maybe, and again, we'll find out more looking back, that your peaceful protest doesn't get co-opted by another group of people later on in the evening?
Yeah.
Because there's a conflation, I think here, between a peaceful protest and this violence tonight, which Val put into words so perfectly.
Yeah, there were people who came down with the express purpose of doing it the other way, right?
The right way.
Well, yes, they came earlier, and then there were those who came with a plan to do something else. And then I think, when it's groupthink, it's like it got fanned and flamed and really turned into something that I don't think many people imagined would happen.
Yeah. Catherine, always appreciate your insight.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'd give you a hug right now if we were allowed.
We're not allowed to hug.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Catherine, very much. All right, now, real quickly, elsewhere in the country, protesters clashed with police. We've been seeing it happen in different cities, Denver, Chicago, New York, D.C., many of them now under curfew. ABC's Karina Mitchell has more on those protests.
Once again, peaceful protests turned violent in several cities across the nation following the death of 46-year-old George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. That city and at least 12 others under mandatory curfew tonight. Minnesota's governor, for the first time in 164 years, mobilizing the entire National Guard, some 11,000 members.
The situation in Minneapolis is no longer in any way about the murder of George Floyd. It is about attacking civil society, instilling fear, and disrupting our great cities.
A peaceful demonstration in Philadelphia Saturday afternoon growing violent, a police car set on fire. This disturbing scene in Bakersfield, California. A car speeding through a crowd. Luckily, no one was seriously injured. And a dramatic standoff between protesters and police in Chicago. In Seattle, the words "Don't kill us" spelled out by demonstrators. Several dozen protesters arrested here in New York City on Saturday after more than 200 arrests Friday night. The outrage erupting after Derek Chauvin, the white former Minneapolis police officer, was seen in this disturbing video pressing his knee into Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes.
Please, I can't breathe.
Chauvin now charged with third-degree murder and aggravated assault. 3 other officers involved in the arrest still under investigation. Last night, protests in the nation's capital turning violent. Today, protesters once again gathering near the White House. Some in Minneapolis see violence as option.
If we gotta do it the violent way, then that's what we're gonna do, because we're going to get answers one way or another.
But city officials were quick to point out some of those arrested are from out of state.
Those folks who are agitating and inciting are taking advantage of the pain, of the hurt, of the frustration, of the anger, of the very real and legitimate sadness that so many of our community members feel.
Karina Mitchell, ABC News, New York.
All right, as we all know too well, these protests come in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. 13 on your side's Nate Belt filed a report yesterday that if you are feeling overwhelmed, you are not alone, and we want to take a minute to talk about the avenues for help.
The images and videos are hard to watch.
There are even people that report that as they watch it, they experience difficulty breathing too, as they're kind of empathizing with some of those images.
After the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis by a white police officer, therapist Jean Holdhouse says the protests around the nation likely turned to violence because of pent-up frustrations.
Once it set it off, it's like the volcano that erupts and all of that emotion spews out all over for all of us.
And a history of similar events in our country.
If we have unresolved trauma in our life of any sort, any new trauma, even if it's not happening to us, if we're watching it, can trigger anything that's left over that's not dealt with.
So how can we cope during these uncertain times? Holdhouse says it begins with your own mindset.
Most of us would think that, well, I don't do the big stuff, but we can be aware of the little ways in which we, in our own heads, even think differently when we walk past someone on the street who's not the same color that we are.
When feeling stress or anxiety with what's going on around you, Holdhouse suggests looking inward and remaining grounded, which will help not just you, but others too.
How do I manage me so that I don't become part of a problem, but I'm becoming part of a solution?
If you're having any anxiety about the current events happening right now, Pine Rest offers all of its services virtually through its telehealth program. We have a link to that over on our website, 13onyourside.com. In Grand Rapids, Nate Belt, 13 on your side.
Okay, and Nick, happy to join you again here. Now, social media, people have been filming and taking pictures of what's been going on in downtown Grand Rapids tonight. Our Val Lego has a bunch of them lined up for us. She's going to share some of the information.
Yeah, I certainly do, and I also have to say, like, I've been reading a lot of comments that have been on our Facebook page, and there are a lot of people that are very concerned, those who live within that area, in the Heritage Hill area and the outlying areas, wondering if they're safe. Is this going to spread outside of downtown? And they have a right, you know, to feel that way. When you look at the video that we've been showing, when you look at the, you know, the protesting that's going on, and once again, talking about the protesting, we need to reiterate as often as we can that there was a peaceful protest that happened earlier this evening. It's now over, and what's happening now is not part of that peaceful protest. Those are two separate events, and I just keep getting more and more comments every time, you know, we talk about how they want to make sure there is a difference between those two events that are happening right now. But we still get to see all of the details that are coming in, all of the social media, and lots of powerful images that are coming in. This is earlier tonight. This is the peaceful protest. Very intense photo, lots of people, but peacefully protesting. And this was a silent march through Rose Park Circle. And many more, you know, have gathered downtown. Jem Beam tweeting earlier that this silent, peaceful protest was originally planned for this evening. It did disperse. And what you're seeing now, all of the images that you're seeing now are not part of that. And our digital producer, Rose White, has been downtown all evening. She's been keeping us, of course, up to date right here. Police continue to advance to try to push the protesters out of the area. She also tweeted tonight that a lot of the focus remains on Fulton. Many of the side streets are becoming a little bit quieter, and that is some very good news to be reporting. Rose also tweeted this powerful photo earlier of tear gas being sprayed on Fulton, and our crews experienced some of the tear gas, and we had seen some of it also dispersing, so we know it's happening down there, that it had happened down there. So we're going to continue to monitor all of our social media overnight and keep you updated on air and online with what's happening, like right in the center, right in the epicenter of what's happening downtown. But, you know, it's heartbreaking, and we hope that it all comes to a peaceful end. Nick and Sarah?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, thank you very much, Val. We're going to keep an eye on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go back now to 13 on your side's Jamal Spencer, live in downtown Grand Rapids. And Jamal, one of the things I want to ask you right off the top, Rose White, our digital producer, had mentioned that things were starting to look quieter. Can you confirm that? Are you seeing that as well?
I am seeing that, but that's also compared to what the scene was about an hour ago, Nick. Things are definitely quieter, but they couldn't have been much louder than what they were an hour ago. We arrived on the scene around 9:45, right outside of the Andel Arena, and almost within minutes of us arriving, water bottles started to be thrown at the police from in the middle of the crowd. The police didn't respond physically. They didn't touch any of the protesters. There were several people yelling in the face of police, voicing their frustrations. That was happening. But the police didn't respond physically until more and more projectiles were thrown Once that happened, the tear gas came out. They fired the first rounds to disperse the crowd. We moved down the block, and the crowd grew more and more upset. That's when the fire broke out shortly after that in the alley behind the Buffalo Wild Wings. After that, more tear gas was fired. The crowd moved further down the block to the Grand Rapids Police Department. And then at that point in time, things got more and more tense. Where we're at right now is actually, we're outside of Hopcat. And I don't know if you guys want to take a shot of this, if video's being played or not, but right outside at Hopcat, windows have been broken out. I'm not sure if anyone's inside or not, but more and more glass is being broken in downtown Grand Rapids. Every few minutes you can hear more. Now again, this is significantly less than what it was an hour ago. There aren't as many people on the street. There aren't as many protesters or rioters in this area. There aren't as many police as a result of that, but there's still damage being done to downtown Grand Rapids at this point in time. Again, an hour ago rather, the downtown Secretary of State absolutely destroyed. Glass being thrown into it. Fire was trying to be set to the building, but it couldn't quite set. The protesters were again tear gassed, moved further and further down. They went around the corner, started laying siege to the Grand Rapids Police Department again. Glass was thrown, projectiles were thrown at the police again. One thing I do want to reiterate tonight, I've said this a few times and I'd like to be clear. Nick, you asked me this earlier tonight. I did not see protesters put hands on police. I did not see police put hands on protesters. Other than them firing tear gas into the crowd and protesters throwing water at them, that was the only type of interaction I saw between the two. Police used tear gas to try to control the situation as best they could. Things are much, much quieter now than they were just a little bit ago. But there's still people walking around downtown. There's still people gathered right outside this Hopcat right now. There's still people walking around trying to make sense of what's happening tonight, but there is not as much of a police presence as there was an hour ago. Nick, I'm free to answer any questions, or I'm free to talk back and forth if you guys want.
Absolutely, Jamal. I want to underline that point you made, though, about protesters not putting hands on police, police not putting hands on them. On a night like tonight that we've seen with a whole lot of damage, a whole lot of graffiti, some thefts, fires, we're going to take the wins where we can get them. So I'm glad that you keep hammering that point. Question I got for you right now, first of all, you were right in the middle of a lot of the disbursement materials. I don't know if you took tear gas proper, but how long has it been since you've heard any of that kind of activity? Because we're at about 8 minutes past midnight now, so how long has it been since you've heard that?
Thank you for reporting accurately.
Nick, I mean, it was around 11:15, between 11 o'clock and 11:15 when I last took around the tear gas. I believe we got hit about 3 different times, to be honest with you. One canister hit me as we were asked to disperse, and I'd never been tear gassed before. It was my first time, and it was not an enjoyable experience. But that type of activity that I said was dying down, it's been since about 11:15, 11:30 since I've heard or seen anything that bad, which is kind of how I know things are on the decline right now. But between 9:45 and 10:30, significant rounds of tear gas fired into the crowds at various points in time as Grand Rapids Police Department was trying to find a way to control the situation.
And Jamal, we're seeing the scene behind you now, and you said there are still some people on the street. Has the police presence, they're still around? I see some flashing lights. Are they still kind of standing guard, or what's the sense right now between the police and the remaining protesters there?
Yes, if we can look down the block, you can see police cars at the top of this block here. There are, of course, police cars behind me. Since we've been set up on this corner in front of Hopcat, I've seen one patrol car drive by. They're very much still in the area, driving around, trying to disperse the crowds, trying to get people to go home. But it seems that they have been spread out a bit more than they were. They were one central focus or one central force at the earlier part of the evening from about 9:45 until a solid 10:45, 11 o'clock. They moved as one unit to control areas and parts of downtown Grand Rapids. But now, more and more, they're starting to branch out individually to try to gather control of downtown.
All right, Jamal, one thing I did want to ask as well, only because we have seen this in the last week of protesters harassing journalists. A CNN reporter was arrested. It seems as though our reporters, we can't speak for any of our other affiliates, it seems like you guys have pretty much been able to operate unmolested. Has that been your experience tonight?
Nick, that has been our experience. There's actually a woman standing to my right. While one of you were asking me a question, a woman holding a sign that says Black Lives Matter walked up to me and said, "Thank you for reporting the facts fairly. Thank you for reporting the truth as to what went on tonight." And we have not had any problems with protesters. We've had a lot of angry people yelling at us, but they weren't yelling about the media. They were voicing their displeasure with the police. They were voicing their displeasure with law enforcement in general. They were voicing their anger and frustration over what's happened in this country this week. But we have not had any problems with people being upset with the media tonight. We have not had any problems with people trying to obstruct us from doing our job. We've been able to operate freely. And for the most part, people have respected that tonight.
All right, Jamal, good. Glad to hear that. And stand by. We'll be back with you in a little bit. Thank you, my friend.
Now we're going to join Kylie Amber, who's joining us. Rather, she was out in the streets today. Kylie, you did a fantastic job. I've got to commend you. Talk about this experience. I can't imagine you've ever experienced something like this in your career.
Yeah, as a younger reporter, I'd say this is a first. Being tear gassed was a first as well. Stings a little bit. But I'd say I had a similar experience as Jamal was saying. I mean, I think the people out there, on both sides of the line, were fairly respectful of us. Of course, you have one or two who didn't quite want you there, but for the most part, we did get told good job or keep up the work or just stay safe, which means everything when you're out there and you're hearing those big bangs that we've been showing you. You're seeing people get tear gassed like on the scenes right now. Jarring, I'd say, for people who haven't experienced it like myself.
Talk about the tension out there. We saw multiple times where, and Jamal pointed this out, protesters right in the faces of police. Talk about the tension and from your perspective, how people were conducting themselves.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'd say you could cut it with a knife. The tension was pretty thick. You did have officers with kind of that stone cold face look as they had their shields up, more so when I would say the roads were barricaded. You had officers on one side, just such a clear divide with protesters on the other. Protesters were definitely letting their voices be heard. They had their signs, but they were also using their voices at loud volumes, strong language, not necessarily negative or like bad words, but just strong, meaningful language that they were trying to share.
Was there ever a moment when you thought, and out of control is a subjective phrase. Mm-hmm. I think we've seen a lot of things that were out of control this evening with some looting that we've heard about, with the vandalism,
Mm-hmm.
breaking of windows. Was there ever a moment when you felt like, oh my gosh, this may explode with some serious person-on-person violence?
Yeah, I think the first time, because it kind of escalated, one of those shops, I believe it was called Villa,
yeah.
Was broken into, and it seemed like almost instantly a majority of that crowd blockaded that door to prevent anything else from happening. They said this isn't what this protest is about, and they were really trying to protect that business. And then throughout the night, I'd say I thought it could explode when 82 on Ionia, there was a big dumpster fire happening, and I did see some people going in there. We did see some almost like explosions, and I got a little nervous as it came from police to protesters on the scene.
Another question I wanted to run by you real quick. You made a point of saying that there were several people who tried to protect Villa, essentially.
Yes.
We're going to know more if there were any arrests and where these people were from in the coming days, but it seemed like there were a majority of people trying to prevent that type of damage and violence. Was it a minority of people who were really, I don't want to say the bad apples, but...
From my perspective, yes, and in talking with the two organizers today, I met up with them right before the protest, and they said, we want this to be peaceful. We want to show that our movement is of unity and of peace, and it did seem like the majority of people also wanted that. You would hear people on the sidelines say, now the police are going to come out, or now this, or now that. So very quickly, people were, I guess, coming to the rescue of that building. One car actually rolled up. Somebody got on top of it and said, this is a Black-owned business, and regardless, this is not what we want this to be about.
And something that Val had brought up before from a viewer, that the peaceful protest that happened earlier, you were there from 6 o'clock in Rosa Parks Circle, to what it turned into, or didn't turn into, was a separate protest, what happened later in the evening. She kind of made that differentiation, and I think you can probably attest to that, it felt very peaceful in the beginning. You know, I didn't get the vibe that it was going to
I'd
evolve.
say it felt very peaceful and organized. As you said, it kind of divulged into something else. I think from the beginning, everybody knew what was going to happen. It was going to be a silent protest. They were handing out masks for social distancing. Everyone kind of single filed in a line, and that just wasn't the case. It's not the case when you turn and you look on the screen now and you see people who are kind of, I wouldn't say all over the place, but they definitely aren't single file anymore.
All right, Kylie Ambu, appreciate the work you did tonight. Glad you're back safe in house.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. We're going to go back out to 13 on your side to Jamal Spencer. Back down in Grand Rapids. And Jamal, I am seeing lights behind you. I'm still hoping that we are seeing a continuing trend of things de-escalating.
Sort of, Nick. Things are de-escalating, but you're still seeing pockets of people walk up to the police. You're seeing pockets of people ask police questions. Occasionally, you'll see an angry person walk by. Again, there's significantly less people here now than there were a moment ago, but the tensions are, I can't say they're high. Emotions are still high at this point in time. We're at the corner of Ionia and Fulton. When we arrived, we were actually just down the block here, almost directly outside of Van Andel Arena. At that point in time, as I mentioned, almost immediately, tear gas was thrown, canisters were thrown, and the police department, as well as the state police troopers, took control of this area. They started moving people down the block further and further, and every time they dispersed tear gas, they were trying to move people further and further away until they could take control of a situation. As I mentioned, we eventually ended up down the block, past the Grand Rapids Police Department, where we saw more people putting graffiti on buildings. We saw more people throwing things. We saw more people screaming and yelling. We saw people breaking glass at the Secretary of State building. More and more people were later tear gassed at that point in time. There are very, very small pockets of people left on the street, very, very small pockets of people screaming and yelling, and you see the police standing vigilant here trying to keep people from getting into this area.
Jamal, you just mentioned, you said emotions are high, not tensions are high. We just spoke to Kylie Amber, who had been out there since 6 p.m., and she mentioned at some point during the night the tensions were extremely high. She said it was very tense out there. Describe further what you mean in terms of emotions are high. What is the sense? Do you feel anger is still in the air? What are you really feeling out there?
100% anger, Sarah. People are still very angry and probably will continue to be so throughout the night into tomorrow, and who knows for how long. This is something that has been happening, and you've seen it happen around the country all week long. People are angry and they are voicing their anger. Tonight, when I said tensions were high, that's when things were reaching a peak. When I said people were nose to nose, protesters and police officers nose to nose, protesters yelling at the face of police officers, screaming in the face of police officers, and to these officers' credit, they did not respond. They did not respond physically. They did not respond verbally. They said nothing. People were able to yell, people were able to scream, and even now, you might be able to hear across the street, there's a woman who's still screaming at some of these police officers. A woman is still voicing her anger, still voicing her displeasure. That's what I mean when I say emotions are still high, but because that is a single case and not hundreds and hundreds of people as it was a few hours ago, I can't say that tensions are high. But yes, earlier tonight, it was a very tense situation with people nose to nose with police, people setting fires, people throwing things through windows, people damaging property, and ultimately leading to the police department and state troopers tear gassing these people to try to get control of the situation. But as of now, smaller and smaller pockets of people remain downtown, but that anger, that frustration is definitely still there, Sarah.
All right, Jamal, this is Nick again. Hopefully we are on the back end of this. It definitely seems like there are fewer people. Are you able to pinpoint, because you've been down there through the thick of this, are you able to pinpoint any moment when things really started, maybe the air got let out of the balloon, or was this just a gradual thing, do you think, where people just maybe started getting tired and disinterested and left?
I think the police department likely put together a strategy when the Secretary of State building came under siege. That building was being pelted with rocks and things were being thrown into windows and people were trying to light the building on fire, as I mentioned. The longer that went on, Nick, I think the more and more police were trying to come up with a way to stop this. After the police ultimately ended up moving down the block here, moved past the police department up to the corner where you might remember we saw a woman laying on the ground who had to be helped by emergency services. She had to be helped by an EMT. Shortly after that, police moved down this street and took control of that corner, firing more and more canisters of tear gas into the crowd. Unlike before, when it was just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 canisters, it seemed to be a barrage of smoke that was hurled into that direction. And once protesters saw that, it seemed to be a larger deal of tear gas than they were able to handle. They dispersed in several different directions. That was around 10:45. Shortly after 10:45, the crowd moved around the corner, but they were being driven further and further away by the police department. And that was around the time things started to calm down. Again, Nick, they weren't calm per se, but between 10:45 and 11:15 was right around the time things started to shift, right around the time where people started to go home.
And Jamal, I'm taking a cue from Nick's questions tonight to a lot of people. You and I are about the same age. We're about the same point in our career. Have you ever experienced something like this? I don't think I personally have.
Not with this level of anger. I know Nick talked about being tear gassed, I believe covering things in East Lansing or covering things in Lansing. I know there have been athletic riots before where students have been tear gassed. There have been things on the campus of Michigan State University or in East Lansing, called Spartan Fest, where there have been students tear gassed before by law enforcement. Things like that I've seen. I've never experienced anything like it myself, Sarah, and to be completely honest, last night I called my parents who are native Detroiters. My parents both grew up in Detroit during the 1967 riots, and I tried to get their perspective as to what it was like. And I asked, are you seeing anything that leads you to believe this is what it was like? And they said, no, not yet, because the 1967 riots lasted a week. The 1967 riots caused millions of dollars of damage and people's lives were lost, and it was significantly worse than what this is. But my parents agreed they had not seen anything like this since 1967. So no, I've never seen or experienced anything like this myself personally, and it is something that I hope never to experience again, to be quite honest.
Yeah, fantastic perspective, Jamal, and I think we all agree with you very much, especially on that last point, Jamal. We appreciate it very much. You continue to stay safe out there.
13 on your sides, Emma Nicholas is also still downtown. We're going to check in with her. Emma, where are you now and what are you seeing?
Hi, that's right. We're on Ionia Avenue Northwest. You can see here there is a fire that's broken out behind us. This is just around the corner from the prosecutor's office. The windows are smashed in at the prosecutor's office. We can't get over to that area just right now, but I'll show you over here too. It might be difficult to see, but police are barricaded here. There's been quite a bit of tear gas coming down this road. It's pretty much what you're hearing is either gas, you're hearing flashbangs or windows being smashed at a pretty frequent rate. It's not clear how this fire started over here. We weren't here when it first started, but this is what we're seeing right now.
Okay.
Crowds have largely thinned out, but there is still a large group of people in this area, which is kind of the Ionia, Monroe Center, and Fulton area.
Okay, a lot more active in that area. Emma, we thank you very much. Stand by. We're bringing back in now Sergeant Dan Adams over the phone from the Grand Rapids Police Department. We appreciate you rejoining us, sir. Our reporters and our cameras on the ground are seeing a lot less people than we saw when we spoke. When we spoke last time, things seemed like they were just very much escalating. What is your attitude right now as far as what we're seeing in downtown Grand Rapids?
Well, while the numbers are down, and that's, the number of the large size of the group is down, on the one hand, that's a positive. The concern for us is that the ones that are staying behind, who the information that I have are not part of the original rally, the original intent of this free expressive event, now they've just seemed to move into the phase of vandalism for vandalism's sake. And we've moved from the phase of, protecting the peace, and now it's going to be, whether it's mass arrests or whether it's going to be following up and investigating every complaint, every broken window, every dumpster fire. There's a lot of cameras out there. There's a lot of people taking their selfies and for whatever reason, proud of what they're doing. And that's not Grand Rapids. That's not this community. And so our detectives are ready to follow up on every single one of those. And I hope those people understand that, whether it's our social media or maybe, to the news or whatever it is, we're going to put the pictures out there for their family to see and their employers and their friends and say, hey, do you know this person? Because they committed offense X, Y, Z, and we're going to follow up on that. So it's really disappointing at this point. Disappointing is not even a strong enough word. But now it's just vandalism for vandalism's sake. We're past the point of a message. We're past the point of a conversation. This isn't going to be productive for what the earlier organizers were trying to accomplish. And I've actually had contact with them. They actually reached out to us, thanked us for our professionalism, our decorum, restraint. And so now what we're seeing are just people who are just taking advantage of this and using it as an opportunity just to damage our city, and we just can't stand by for that.
Yeah, Sergeant, you were alluding to just a moment ago, there are a lot of cameras around downtown, both security cameras and folks like us with news cameras, cell phones, and you're also talking about we're getting into the arresting phase. Are you going to be using photos and videos to start arresting people as early as tonight?
We'll have to wait to see how things move forward, but whether it's tonight or tomorrow morning or Monday morning, we have a large enough detective unit to start sifting through everything on social media, surveillance cameras, the cameras around our buildings, looking at, obviously, news reports from you all. And, again, a lot of people down there are pulling off their masks for whatever reason, proud of what they're doing. And we'll put those pictures out there, look to identify them, because anyone out there now shouldn't be out there, and anyone who's out there lighting fires or causing damage, you're not going to use the peaceful protests earlier as an excuse to act that way in our community.
Sergeant,
and not be held responsible.
I want to ask you real quick, one of our reporters, we'd asked him when he thought things started to de-escalate, and he mentioned that the attacks on the Secretary of State's office, busting out the window, someone tried to set it on fire, he felt like that was a moment when the police presence and the tear gas that really came in. It got hot and heavy at that point to disperse the crowd, and he really thinks that is sort of when the air started to get let out of the balloon. It was when police, pushed forward in that moment. Is he accurate at all in the way he saw that?
Well, having been on, having been exposed to those chemical agents and been in that situation before, I imagine that is accurate. It's one thing to stand at a window and try to break it when you think that you're anonymous and nothing's going to happen to you. But when a line of 20, 30, officers and civil unrest gear come around the corner and start utilizing the chemical agents, that is the intent of those maneuvers, is to change that mindset and have people take that second thought. So there's still opportunities out there for people who are downtown to vacate the area, and I would highly recommend it. There's plenty of opportunity for people to go home. We're not going to stop people from going home. That's kind of the intent at this point. But anybody who's left behind and still bent on causing damage in the community, you're going to be held responsible.
All right, Sergeant, as we let you go, I just want to point out another thing that our reporter said is that in all of his time out there tonight, he has not once seen a protester put hands on a police officer, nor has he seen a police officer put hands on a protester. And I'm sure that is not by accident. So once again, we appreciate your time tonight, and we're hoping for everyone's safety down there, both officer and citizen alike. So thank you again very much.
Thank you. Take care.
And we're taking a live look, or we're just looking at a live shot of downtown GR. We're going to toss to our reporter again, Emma Nicholas, who was near those fires that you were just seeing. Emma, what does the scene look like since we last spoke to you just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, as you can see, fire trucks have arrived. We're starting to put that fire out. We are being pushed back now. So we're going to walk back this way. GRPD is pushing us back. I want to show you, though, this is the prosecutor's office. Windows all smashed in this area. Keep seeing this all smashed in. Oh, it looks actually like people got inside and were able to smash inside in those doors, the glass doors inside as well. Front doors are completely smashed. You can see the glass all over the ground. Yeah, we got pushed back so that they could put that fire out. I'll show you the look here as they put a...
Do we have any? Emma, as
we
you're
just saw someone recently throw their bike into that fire as well.
Emma, as you're sitting out there right now, looking at all of this, it seems as though you're once again, however, in a situation where the crowd has definitely dispersed. I don't even see a lot of protesters out there at this point, or are they just out of our camera shot right now?
Yeah, we're not seeing, the groups are largely diminishing, but you kind of find people in pockets, I think is what we're seeing, kind of people move into one area and then disperse once the tear gas is deployed and then kind of end up in a new area. So that's what we've continued to see. You kind of turn the corner and then there's another group of people. But yeah, overall the groups have gotten much smaller.
Okay, Emma, thank you very much. Continue to stay safe out there. We're joined now on the phone by Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss. Mayor, appreciate you taking the time here. First question I've asked quite a few people with the city, including Mark Washington, the city manager. What are your emotions and feelings seeing what's happened to the city that you run tonight?
I have so many feelings. In fact, I just got done walking around with a couple folks, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
What steps does the city take as soon as tomorrow?
You know, so for me, my number one priority is still safety. There's a lot of people still downtown. Even in the time I was out walking, I saw a lot of violence still happening, a lot of windows being broken and looting. So we have got to stabilize and get people home and get the crowds dispersed. And my number one concern right now is safety. So safety for the people who are out, safety for our officers, the people who are trying to create some calm.
Mayor Bliss, a lot of the leaders we've spoken to tonight said they were disappointed to know that this it started out to be something very peaceful in Rosa Parks Circle, and that is not what we're seeing right now. Does it disappoint you to know that this is where we are after midnight on Sunday morning?
Yeah, it is disappointing. I think there's a stronger word for. I'm trying to think of a stronger word, but earlier today there was this incredible show of support in our community. People coming together and in solidarity and locking arms and sharing their pain and their grief and their outrage about the killing of George Floyd and calling for change and I know that the people who planned the earlier march and the gathering, they were very, very clear that it was intended to be a peaceful protest. And so I am unbelievably disappointed that it escalated and we are still dealing with this kind of violence downtown right now.
Mayor, this certainly won't be the last protest that Grand Rapids ever sees. It may not be the last protest we see in regards to the George Floyd killing. What steps maybe do you think could have been taken tonight to try and prevent this that may be taken in the future? And I understand that we're still kind of in the fog of war, as it were, for a phrase, and there'll be more time for assessment tomorrow, but is there anything that you can think of that maybe would have helped prevent this?
That's a great question, and I know we will be debriefing and we'll be bringing people together to answer that very question. I mean, we have long been proud in our city to be a city that allows and welcomes and encourages and respects protests. We've had them throughout at least my entire time on the commission, and we have a process for it, and we have deep respect for that in our community, and so I hope that this doesn't change that. I think there are important things for people to come together and to protest and to join voices around issues that they care deeply about. And so, I think we will have to take a look back and figure out what we could have done to prevent it. But I don't know at this point. I've not seen the likes of this type of violence, and so I think it's going to take some time to not just assess, but really debrief and bring people together and talk about how do we make sure this doesn't happen again.
Mayor Bliss, we had reporters on the street who said at no point did they see protesters touch the police officers or vice versa. The police never interacted negatively with the protesters. What do you say to the ability of the GRPD tonight, the demonstration that they maintained this kind of wellness?
They did not put hands on the protesters
Right.
at any point in time, I think is what we're trying to get at, Mayor.
And how did that, the GRPD do you think they've done a great job tonight in terms of what's happened?
I do, and we, the level of professionalism and restraint, I think we all can be really proud of. And I also want to say how much I appreciate all of our surrounding jurisdictions and the county and the state police who stepped in to help. I mean, that's the collaborative spirit that we have in this community. People, our organizations, they work together, and you see that even in law enforcement coming together. And even when I was just walking around, they clearly are trying to disperse the crowd and use as little force as possible to do that. So I'm very grateful for the professionalism, and then I think restraint is the best word that we're seeing.
Right. Mayor, last question, and we'll let you get out. Several other cities around the country have instituted curfews to varying degrees of success. Is that something that you are going to be considering moving forward into Sunday night?
I am going to consider that. I'm sure I'll be here a lot later, and then first thing tomorrow morning with our Emergency Operating Center, and we'll be talking about next steps. Like I said, my number one priority is to keep people safe, and if enacting a curfew for a small, a short period of time will help us do that, then I'm willing to do that. But that safety right now continues to be my number one priority. My hope and prayer is that no one is injured tonight, and that we don't see a continued escalation of violence.
All right, Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss, we sincerely appreciate your time tonight, and here's hoping that we wake up to a much better city tomorrow than what we've seen this evening.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And now Jamal Spencer is still downtown. We're going to check in with him one more time. Jamal, what does the scene look like now?
We have moved down the street to Fulton and Division. This was the scene where things were at their worst tonight. But to give you a little bit of taste of what's still happening, I told you that tensions weren't high, but emotions were still high. Just minutes ago, people getting in the face of the Kent County Sheriff standing behind me, walking up and down the line, cursing them out, screaming in their face, uttering profanities. The sheriff stood the line, the crowd turned around and retreated in the opposite direction. People voicing their displeasure, law enforcement standing tall, allowing people to be upset and borderline, I don't want to say disrespectful, but some of the things said, I feel, may have crossed a line or two. However, the Kent County Sheriff's here holding the line where things were at their worst. Here, the Village Join the Movement window has been busted out. Right across the street, we show you where, of course, the Secretary of State was. Windows burst. People trying to set the building on fire earlier in the evening until the law enforcement agents were able to move down the block, set off tear gas canisters in this area and take control of the area and begin to push the crowd away. And as I said earlier, Nick, that's when things kind of began to turn tonight. Once the crowd kind of dissipated from this area, law enforcement was able to once again try to seize control of this situation, and people started to eventually disperse. There are still angry people out here tonight. Law enforcement is still standing tall, still doing their job, still standing firm to try to quell whatever rebellion is left here in downtown Grand Rapids and keep the city as safe as they can, protect the property, protect these buildings some of which have been damaged pretty bad. So again, we saw people pick up concrete, decorations that were lying on the sidewalk, the type of things that usually have have flowers in them, pick those up, throw them through the window. People set off fireworks inside these buildings. Things got pretty bad here tonight, but as you can see with how peaceful this scene seems to be right now, eerily so, actually, eerily peaceful versus what was here just an hour or two ago.
All right, Jamal Spencer live in downtown Grand Rapids and eerily peaceful. I think we're going to take that as a note to end this on. Thank you again, Jamal, very much. It has been a long evening in Grand Rapids, which started off with a peaceful protest in downtown Grand Rapids at Rosa Parks Circle. And we will know more in the future about whether it became violent or, as most people think, there was a separate violent protest that took place. And there's going to be a lot of assessment and a lot of looking back on this as we move forward.
Yeah, Nick, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. The news continues, of course, 13onyourside.com.
And we will see you in the morning, and let's hope that we all do wake up to a better day than the evening we just had.
When you want to leave the house, we've got you covered. You'll find the best times to head outside, get some air, take a walk, or go to the store. And when storms roll in,